Get the skills to stay relevant in an ever-changing digital world with the Digital Marketing Institute. In Part 3 of this free course, delivered by skills experts working in the field, you will learn the basic principles of web design, conversion rate optimization and user experience, e-commerce, data analytics, and more. The DMI are the global standard in digital marketing certification. Join over 130,000 members working for companies like Facebook, Google, and HubSpot who power their careers with the Digital Marketing Institute. Let's begin.
So what is website optimization? Well, it's the art of creating and continuously improving websites to improve the visitor experience, which is going to help result in higher visitor satisfaction, a better user experience, and high repeat visit and conversion rates. So it involves a lot of aspects, which we're going to go into. First is UX, short for user experience. So that's how a user is actually using your website. It needs to be as easy to use as possible. Next is design, so how your website is laid out. So the visual components of your website, is a sidebar on one side, whereas the navigation, that all goes into design. And then finally, how a website displays information, so the graphics and the text of a website. All of these things work together to create a better, more optimized website experience. It's going to also help users find the information that they're looking for and lead them to make a purchase, sign up for your email list, whatever else you want them to do. So you go into SEO in a later module, but we're going to talk a little bit about search engine optimization, SEO, in this module. So SEO is basically making sure that a website's information is organized correctly. So that's going to make sure that your website is optimized correctly for SEO, and that's going to make sure that your website can be found on search engines by users. So there's a few terms that you need to know for SEO best practices. A few of those include metadata, which is the meta title tags and descriptions. So that's the information that users see when they're looking at search results. And then a sitemap, and that's basically a list of all the pages on your site, including blog posts. And search engine crawlers use these to index your website. So the difference between website optimization and SEO. Basically, website optimization deals more with the actual experience of the user. So making the website easy to use, that's going to be the formatting of the content, the buttons they click on, the interactive elements, the branding, the color, images, things like that. That all goes into the website optimization. Conversely, SEO is making it as easy as possible for search engines to find and index your website content. And search engines also want your content and your website to be user-friendly, so it works really well together. So things like keyword usage, what content or text is in the headers and titles, that all plays into SEO. So SEO is basically what is in place to help your website viewers get to your website, and then website optimization is their experience once they get there.
The purpose of website optimization. Why is it so important? There's 4 main areas. First, it increases user time on site. When a website is easy to navigate, users are much more likely to stay on the website because they're finding the information that they're looking for. The longer a person is on a website, the more likely they are to make a purchase or complete a conversion. Further, it provides a better user experience. Users can not only find the information they're looking for, but they're also left with a better impression of the company because of their great website. Frequently, users will equate a well-designed website with the company's reputation. When a website's easy to use, users are also more likely to return. 25% of users abandon their online shopping checkout because the site is too hard to use. Users just don't have patience nowadays to go through a poorly designed website. Conversely, with an easy-to-use website, users are not only more likely to convert, they are also more likely to come back. Last but not least, website optimization increases e-commerce sales. If a website is really fast and easy to use, People are going to spread the news. They are going to tell their friends and family about the website and the company, and that's going to lead to more sales. How does website optimization affect the buyer's journey? There are 5 key areas. The first is awareness. The buyer is aware of a problem and they're trying to find initial solutions. For example, this might be an air conditioner that's broken, but the owner doesn't quite know how to fix it. Their initial journey is going to be, why is it broken? What's the noise coming from? The next step is interest. They might have found your company and the services you provide, and they're just finding out more about you. What's it like to work with you? Maybe they're looking for company reviews, things that are easily found on a website, and that it's your job to show them. The next step is consideration. They are considering making a purchase from you. They're almost there, and having additional marketing materials, testimonials, and reviews will help your customers find out more about you online. Finally, they go to conversion. For some brands, that's completing a sale on their website. For others, that's an email sign-up or a download of a white paper. That means that they either bought something or they've turned into a customer on your funnel. The last key area is retention. Building a relationship is going to help keep customers active in your company and with your company. It's your job to keep sending them information and products that they're interested in, to ensure you keep them coming back. The purpose of website optimization is to make it as easy as possible for users to convert. Some of the problems that we commonly see in website optimization is a confusing navigation. If the user doesn't know where to find the information or product that they are looking for, they are likely to get frustrated and leave the website. That's one of the easy problems to solve. What's required is just better navigation. In addition, your checkout process needs to be as fast and simple as possible. Users also need to know why it's in their interest to convert or make a purchase from your company. If the information is too confusing, if it's hard to understand, then they're less likely to make a purchase. And then, finally, as users lead increasingly busy lives online and have less time to waste, it's important to have a faster website that avoids creating delays or frustration. That all goes into website optimization. Website optimization affects all areas of digital marketing. Bad navigation and website design can make it hard for search engines to crawl the site, which in turn affects whether it is shown in search results. Graphic design and website optimization work together to affect how a website is laid out and how users can use the site and interact with the information. Testing different attributes of the website, such as its layout or CTA button color, play into its optimization. This can also help in the testing of user metrics, including conversions and engagement. The design, color, and layout of your company emails should align with the design of your website. This creates trust and a more cohesive experience for the user. Your branding is going to be the same on the website as it is on social media. The information that's shared in social media is also shared on the website. If there is a disconnect between the two, you risk your users becoming confused. If a website isn't optimized for mobile, then users aren't going to have the same experience that they would have on their desktop computer or tablet. It's very important that users don't have a hard time trying to scroll or find what they're looking for, even though they're on their phone. Mobile optimization ensures a better user experience. no matter how a user accesses a website. The speed that your pages load on your website. Not only is this a ranking factor for SEO, but it also greatly improves the user experience when pages load quickly. The role of a marketer in website design is both important and crucial. Marketers work with website designers, programmers, and developers to craft a website that is appealing to both users and search engines. It is important to note that marketers not only write and edit the actual website copy, they also set brand guidelines and give feedback on design layouts. They optimize the site to follow best SEO practices and make sure that the information is optimized. They also work with the development team to ensure all API and tracking tools are set up and working correctly. And then, finally, marketers make sure that the best practices of user engagement are being followed, so users are not only getting a good experience, but are also providing valuable feedback. The 4 key components of website design are architecture, design, content, and optimization. Architecture covers the steps involved in building your website. You're going to choose a hosting provider, a CMS, also known as a content management system, and then a domain name. Next, you're going to install a CMS and the required plugins and features. You're then going to build out the layout and design. That's the actual look and feel of the site. You're going to add elements like buttons, graphics, text, and then the SEO of the site. At this stage, you're going to test the site and launch it. And then, as the launch rolls out, you're going to look for and fix anything that isn't working, things that people notice that you didn't catch during the test phase. Design covers the steps involved in designing your website. It's what a website looks like on the front end. The way that works is, first, there's a mock-up of a site from the designer. It's a long-form wireframe drawing that shows all the pages of the site and examples of what it'll look like. Next, you're going to get feedback from the developer and the marketing team and implement changes based on that feedback. Then, the website is going to go into a live design with the developer. After that's done, you're going to work with the team to finish the site and ideally put it on the staging platform before it goes live. Content covers the steps involved in deciding what copy to include on your website. All the information on your website, including downloadable files, PDF guides, infographics, blog posts, and images, are included in the content. First, what you're going to do is create a list of pages. You can use the wireframe from the website design and fill it in with the website content. Next, you're going to copy edit the content, so that's going to involve someone other than the original writer. They're going to look for grammatical errors and spelling mistakes, and also check for sense, readability, and content accuracy. And then, finally, you're going to add the content onto the built website. Optimization covers the steps involved in organizing a website's information so that it is best presented. You're going to follow the best SEO practices, making sure that the content is best optimized not only for the user, but also for search engines. You're going to set up metrics, reporting in Google Analytics, and test what works and what doesn't. And then, finally, you're going to ask colleagues or outside users for website feedback. If you don't want to use actual customers, there are platforms you can use, such as usertesting.com.
In this section, we'll examine the importance of user experience for both users and business. we'll see that user experience isn't limited to the surface layer of the interface, but also the functionality and workings of the system behind it. We'll also discuss the importance of demonstrating value for users as early as possible in their journey, especially nowadays because consumers have shorter attention spans to compete for. In all cases, investment by the user of time must be reciprocated with something of value to the user. From a marketer's perspective, we'll see how UX has evolved and will continue to evolve, and why this is important for your business. We'll explore the benefits of positive UX, including the overall commercial benefits and the ROI metrics which justify investment into improvements to UX. We'll also see why placing the user at the center of the design process is critical to success. At the end of this section, we'll look at how you can identify user needs and why it's better to make design decisions based on behavior data rather than persona or psychological profile. And because user experience design involves so many factors, it's often not easy to get it right. And that's why we'll introduce the core principles of UX design theory. Understanding these principles is key to success. The overall user experience isn't just limited to the visible surface layer of an interface. Of course, the UX is directly affected by the functionality of the system behind it. It's important that the back-end processes fully deliver on the expectations of the user. Therefore, the back-end is very much within the scope of UX considerations. Don Norman and Jacob Nielsen summed it up when they said, "It's important to distinguish the total user experience from the user interface, UI, even though the UI is obviously an extremely important part of the design. As an example, consider a website with movie reviews. Even if the UI for finding a film is perfect, the UX will be poor for a user who wants information about a small independent release if the underlying database only contains movies from the major studios." Nowadays, because consumers have less time and diminishing attention spans, there's an emphasis on immediacy when it comes to delivery of service. On a website, you only have seconds to make an initial impression before visitors leave. In the context of UX, we therefore need to focus on demonstrating value for the user very early in the journey. 1 in 3 users, for example, will abandon a purchase because they can't find the right information. The era of digital UX has been around for at least 20 years, when companies like Apple began designing products with users at the center. The iPhone was unveiled in 2007, promising to be easier to use than any other smartphone on the market. Not only did it deliver on its promise, but it changed the landscape of mobile devices, catapulting Apple into its position as one of the world's most successful companies. The genius of the original iPhone arguably lay in its fusion of superior hardware and software to provide connectivity through a revolutionary capacitive touchscreen, making the physical keyboards of other phones obsolete. Put more simply, it provided a user experience superior to that of any other contemporary phone. And this inadvertently led to the current focus for many businesses on user experience. If Apple's emphasis on delivering great user experience was winning them market success and critical accolades, others wanted in on it too. As technology continues to become more ingrained in our lives, we can expect to see UX continue to evolve. The internet is no longer confined to laptops or smartphones. With wearables and even implantables, we're in a state of constant communication. While this provides opportunities, it means businesses need to constantly update to take those opportunities. The value of design is difficult to define, but to place it in financial terms, there's a growing body of evidence that good design delivers shareholder value. One study completed a number of years ago by Motive Strategies developed a market index to track how design-focused companies perform relative to the S&P 500 over time. 15 publicly traded U.S. companies made the criteria for inclusion. The results showed that over a 10-year period, design-focused companies outperformed the S&P by an extraordinary 211%. A superior user experience leads directly to a competitive advantage because consumers will naturally opt for anything which saves time or makes things easier to use. Research from Forrester suggests that up to 97% of websites fail when it comes to user experience. When compared to their peers, the top 10 companies leading in customer experience outperformed the Standard & Poor's index with close to triple the returns. Forrester data. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, for example, invested 100 times more into customer experience than advertising during the first year of Amazon. And if you're looking for metrics to justify improvements in UX, according to a survey by NN Group, the average improvement in ROI from usability improvements is 83%. Expedia, for example, increased earnings by $12 million just through dropping one field from an online form. Many organizations over time use a set formula for the development of digital assets, such as the website. However, when not combined with a good understanding of your users, the site is unlikely to gain much traction. It's important to realize that there is an element of design in just about everything consumers use. Don Norman, in his book, The Design of Everyday Things, discusses an example of how a backward teapot is absurd, to highlight that even the most common of products have design elements in them. Although the teapot might be attractive, shiny and desirable, or even a collector's item, it still has features and functionality that simply are wrong for the user. It doesn't matter how good it visually appears if it doesn't work. You could say that humans have always used design to make their life simpler, known as ergonomics. The main point is that we use design to make our lives easier and get things done. UX design is the amplification of this concept and thought process in the digital world. When it comes to user experience, identifying user needs can be complex, especially when it involves more than one audience. However, it's an important process and should be done through targeted research. It involves being able to empathize with the audience based on the different demographic and segment preferences. Usability testing is a way to see how easy it is to use a product by testing it with representative users. Typically, users are asked to complete tasks while they are being observed to see if they encounter problems or experience confusion. The goal is to identify problems and determine the user's satisfaction with the product. Usability testing can help determine problems before a product is released, so that changes can be made before launch. It's better to make design decisions based on user behavior data rather than psychological profile or persona. In other words, what common behaviors have you observed? Which pages do users spend more time on? Where do they abandon most? What is the average spend during peak periods? This is objective rather than subjective data. There are many advantages for businesses to placing users at the center of design. User experience design involves multiple different factors and overlaps with many other disciplines. And that's why it's often not easy to get right. Aside from the physical elements like digital assets, text, video, etc., and information architecture, there are many overlapping areas such as visual design, interaction design, and more. A number of these depend on human elements such as user expectation and goals. And so you can see why this requires careful understanding to get right. The core principles of UX design are, firstly, research based on the users and especially their usage of the product or service. Second, focus on achieving the user's goals, solving the problems that they have. Thirdly, focus on the details, go deep into the user experience. Also, because you're working with finite resources, prioritize and do the things which will have the biggest impact on the end goals. Finally, always validate the design with your users before building. To summarize, it's important to realize that user experience isn't limited to the surface layer of an interface, but it includes the functionality and workings behind it. While the user interface is clearly a very important part of the design, even if that's very strong, you could still have a poor overall user experience if it doesn't do what the user wants. Users use digital products to achieve goals via a series of steps. The usability of a product is the ease with which users achieve their goals. And nowadays, because consumers have less time, you need to demonstrate value as quickly as possible, or they will question their reason to use the product. There are many benefits of positive UX for businesses. In fact, it has been shown that there's a link in financial terms between design-centered companies and overall company performance. Of course, usability itself can mean the difference between the overall commercial adoption of a product or not. Therefore, a superior user experience leads directly to competitive advantage. Being user-centered means increased conversions, higher user satisfaction, and better project outcomes with less development costs. Of course, in order to provide a positive user experience, you need to understand the importance of design and understanding user needs, which can be a complex process. It involves empathy, and you cannot make assumptions about users. Your design decisions should be based on concrete data, like behavior data rather than personas. User experience design is the process of enhancing user satisfaction with a product by improving the usability, accessibility, and pleasure provided in the interaction with the product. It involves a number of factors and overlaps with many other disciplines. It's not easy to get right, and if you can, keep the design simple. Finally, the core principles of UX design are research, solving the user's needs, focus on details, prioritize the items with greatest impact, and validate before you build. In this final section, we'll look at web design and see that its primary purpose is to ensure content is findable and usable to visitors. We start by looking at why visual hierarchy is critical to web design. That is, the order in which users process information. We'll look at how different visual characteristics influence users' perception of the hierarchy and how they behave on the site. We'll go on to discuss accessibility and why it's important to ensure the widest range of consumers can access your products and services. In this section, we'll also look at the problem of friction for users, particularly with marketing forms and the best ways to reduce friction. We conclude by considering other areas, which may not be obvious, that affect the overall user experience and are often indicators of other issues like page speed and so on. The main purpose of web design is to make the content findable and usable to visitors. Once they find the relevant content page, each page should have a primary task for the user to complete. The visual hierarchy is very important to web design. In other words, the order in which users process information. Its function is to allow users to process information easily. By using different visual characteristics, example, larger fonts on headings, alignment, etc., designers can influence users' perception of the hierarchy. The F pattern is the way our eyes move when we read content online, scanning the page in this order. First, across the top of the page to read important headlines, then down the left side of the page to view numerals or bullet points, lastly, across the page again to read bolded text or subheadlines. Accessibility, as we've seen, is important so that the widest range of consumers can access your product or service. However, an accessible website is also one of the easiest ways to do business for many people with disabilities. For instance, people who cannot read print material, people who have difficulty going to a physical store or mall, and others. Web accessibility also benefits people without disabilities. For example, people using mobile phones, smartwatches, smart TVs, and other devices with small screens or different input modes, etc. Older people with changing abilities due to aging. People with temporary disabilities, such as a broken arm or lost glasses. People with situational limitations, such as in bright sunlight or in an environment where they cannot listen to audio. People using a slow internet connection, or who have limited or expensive bandwidth. Sticky navigation is a fixed navigation menu on a web page that remains visible and in the same position as the user scrolls down and moves about a site. Page headers sit at the top of each page and provide a consistent user experience by ensuring the core navigation remains the same across the site. The information architecture is the identification of website content and functionality and their organization and structure. Progress bars display the progress of a task, which may take time, and are implemented with a couple of lines of web script. One of the areas you need to consider on your site is friction for users, particularly with forms. Friction is points on the customer journey that they may find difficult or confusing, and which therefore reduce conversion rates. There are a number of ways to reduce friction, including having clear calls to action, intuitive forms and labels, clear messaging, and also providing validation on form fields. A good example of form validation is on a new user page, checking whether a username exists before the user tries to create the new user record. You will also find that using templates, libraries, and design patterns is a very practical way to help create a consistent UX, as well as helping when you're working with third-party web developers. Some of the results of poor web design can be distracting ads or too many pop-ups. It's also possible to have too many calls to action on a page so that the user becomes confused. The calls to action are competing with each other. Similarly, dark patterns are an example of poor web design, where companies try to trick users into doing things they might not otherwise do, such as buying insurance with their purchase or signing up for recurring bills. This is related to GDPR, in that you must clearly provide an opt-in to users where any personal data is involved. You cannot rely on users to opt out. Finally, slow-loading sites, as previously mentioned, may be the result of poorly designed pages. There are a number of areas which may not be obvious when validating your web design. For example, page speed, which clearly impacts on user experience and is often an indicator of other issues on the site, such as bugs in code, plugins not updated, or images which have not been compressed. This especially affects mobile users, who are 3 times more likely to leave a page if it takes longer than 3 seconds to load. Page speed is also a ranking factor for Google. Launching a site isn't enough, but having a commitment to continually optimize is key to having a successful website or service. The first stage of the UX design process is all about defining, understanding the problems. But because it's iterative, it doesn't stop. Therefore, it's unhealthy to think the designs are perfect. Amazon and Booking.com are 2 good examples of sites that are constantly evolving and improving.
Finally, let's review the best practices for web design. The primary purpose of web design is to make content findable and usable. The visual hierarchy is very important to that. That is, the order in which users process information. Its function is to allow users to process information quickly. By using different visual characteristics like alignment, larger fonts on headings, etc., you can influence the user's perception of the hierarchy. Responsive web design is an approach that creates dynamic changes for the appearance of a website, depending on the screen size and orientation of the device using it. It ensures an optimal approach for users, no matter what device. There are also a range of features and functionality which assist users with navigation on a website. That includes the information architecture, page headers, sticky navigation, and progress bars. It's also a good idea to reduce friction for users with the forms on your site. That can be done by having clear calls to action, intuitive forms and labeling, clear messaging, and also by providing validation on form fields. You will also find that using templates, libraries, and design patterns is a very practical way to help create a consistent UX. Page speed is also an important metric when it comes to validating your web design. It can be an indicator of other issues, like bugs or uncompressed issues, and will really affect users on mobile devices. Finally, don't forget that you can validate your web designs using A/B testing to look at areas like calls to action, headlines, pop-ups, and more. Plus, always make sure to browser test on multiple devices.
So let's start simple. What is e-commerce? It's basically the buying and selling of goods and services enabled by the internet. That could be through mobile websites, through traditional desktop websites, or even through mobile apps. And it can involve businesses selling to other businesses, businesses selling to consumers, and even consumers selling to other consumers. E-commerce is also evolving at a rapid rate. So there's lots of examples on this slide, but if we just take Amazon as an example, they started off by simply selling books to consumers. They now sell every possible product across every possible category. They have a marketplace website business where consumers can sell to other consumers, and they have a more traditional retail business where buyers buy and sell on in big volumes to consumers. They've also got a video streaming service. They're a huge logistical operation using everything from vans to drones to deliver products and services to people. And they're also a massive web service provider. Amazon Web Services is one of the biggest and profitable parts of their business. So that just shows how the business is evolving and how big players are massively capitalizing from it. Now let's look at the nuts and bolts of e-commerce. Effectively what you're trying to do is get a customer to your site, show them a product that is at the right price and meets their need, offer the service that they're looking for, i.e. that you're going to get them that product at the right time, and then securely take payment. Okay, now let's look at a key concept of e-commerce, which is conversion rate optimization. So essentially the conversion rate is just the percentage of people that come to the site who go on to take the action that you want, which in most examples is buying your good or service. So let's take an example of a clothing retailer. So there's a whole host of people coming to the site through a variety of different marketing channels. We refer to these people as traffic. And some of these people are going to drop out at each stage of the buying process. So for example, when they land on the home page, people will have a look around, and a certain percentage of those people will just decide that, you know, the style of this brand or the style of these products or even the look of this website is not for me, and so we'll leave. But a good portion of those people or the original traffic will stay. So they'll go and look around, potentially click on a product category like jeans, go into that, look at the range of offering there. Again, some more people will leave at this stage because the price points are wrong or the product offering is not quite right. But again, a portion of that population will stay. They'll click on the product, go down onto a product page, again look at the price, the product specification, and hopefully as many of those stay as possible, and they'll put that product into their basket. Then, once the product's into the basket, ideally they go and review that basket and proceed to checkout. And again, at each stage of the checkout will lose a certain percentage of the traffic, whether it's because it's too difficult for them to put their address in, or they want to go and check whether prices are better on other sites. We'll lose a certain amount of people at each stage. But at the end, we'll end up with a percentage of people who have gone on to buy the product. And the process of conversion rate optimization is about making changes to the website and analysing the data so that the percentage of people left at the end is as big as possible. So as we've just discussed, at each stage of the process, we're going to lose people from the buying process. And so we need to try and minimise that. And the way that we do that is by doing three things. First of all, we start with the basics, which is all about understanding your consumer and understanding how your offering gives them value. So what is it about you that makes them choose you over your competition? Is it that you're cheaper? Is it that your service is better? Is it that your brand resonates with them more? Secondly, we need to choose an e-commerce platform that delivers against that. So there are certain e-commerce platforms that are brilliant for displaying a massive range of products and making those products easy to find. There are other e-commerce platforms at the other end of the spectrum that are tailor-made for showing one or two products in an incredibly compelling way. And you need to choose the one that supports your value proposition most closely. Thirdly, we need to use marketing channels and target appropriate consumers who drive the right type of traffic into the funnel in the first place. So if all these things work well together, you get the right type of people coming to the site who are displayed with a value proposition that relates to them, and then the site is easy for them to navigate and go all the way through the conversion funnel to purchase at the end. Now let's look at value proposition in a bit more detail and how it's enabled and supported by the other parts of the business. So say, for example, you are Netflix and your value proposition is all about providing awesome content to your consumers when and where they want it. That needs to be underpinned by technology that enables you to do that. Or if you're a luxury fashion brand like Gucci, you need to make sure that your marketing is aspirational and premium, and so targets the right type of people and delivers the right type of people to your website to go on to make purchases. Likewise, if you're an art gallery, for example, you need to make sure that the design and feel of your website is aligned with that and is classy and suave. And finally, if you're a logistics or if you're a grocery business that is delivering fresh food to people, you need to make sure that you've got the logistics in place to make that possible. So all of these functions need to work together across all different types of businesses to make sure that they deliver the promise they've made in their value proposition. And that's why people will choose your brand or business over the competition. Almost all value propositions need to be underpinned by some logistical capabilities, and then there'll be knock-on effects for the commercials of the business. So let's just take delivery as an example. So as a minimum, most consumers would expect to be able to buy from an e-commerce site and then have their product delivered to them maybe in 3 to 5 working days after that, and they might be willing to pay a fee for it. However, as different companies try and differentiate themselves from the competition, the level of service offered to consumers gets even better. And so if you take Amazon, for example, if you're a Prime customer, you can get products delivered the same day for no additional cost. And obviously there are costs for a business of choosing to match that service. The delivery companies still need to be paid, the warehouses still need to be paid, and so it's a decision for the business of do they pass that cost onto the end consumer, or do they choose to take it into their costs of doing business? And again, that decision will depend on how important the service is to their value proposition, and also how much competition there is in their sector and across different categories and in different channels. So for example, if I'm selling my golf trousers through our website, and those trousers are also available on Amazon, and we're charging someone $7.95 for 5-day delivery, and an Amazon Prime customer can get them delivered the next day for free, we need to be very conscious that we might lose sales to that channel if we don't match it. But conversely, if we do match it, we still need to pay the delivery companies, and so that impacts our margin. So that's just looking at delivery. The same can also be said for returns. So again, it's quite common to ask consumers to send the products back to you at their cost, but there's lots of companies that are differentiating themselves by saying, no, actually, if we send you the product, you can return them to us for free if they're not exactly the size or the fit that you like. Likewise with product packaging. Again, just receiving the product in a brown box or a plastic bag, again, is the kind of basic hygiene factors that consumers expect, quite rightly. But there's other companies that are providing amazing consumer experience when the product's delivered. If you think about when you buy or receive an Apple product, that experience of unboxing the product, getting the product out, is a big part of the user experience. But none of that comes for free. And so all of that needs to be worked into the commercials of the business and evaluated of whether it's worth paying the price to help differentiate you from your competition. Okay, now let's look at the business model a little bit more holistically, as there's a huge number of things we need to consider when getting the business model right. This slide helps map out some of the key areas for us. So first of all, looking at key partners. The list of potential partners for your business is massive. If you think just about getting your products, you've got your suppliers, getting your products to your customers, you've got freight forwarders, warehouse partners, couriers. Then marketing your products, you've got potential agencies. And across all of these, you've got decisions to make about whether you want that resource to be internal in your business or partnering with external agencies. And so as I say, there are a huge number of options there, and getting the decisions right about which ones you work with will massively help you be successful and also maximise your efficiency. Secondly, looking at key activities. Again, running a business, there are so many different things that can take your time and resource. And one of the greatest challenges is choosing where to spend that time, and also choosing which things not to do. Something I've always found very useful is having a really clear objective of what the business is trying to overachieve, then having a clear set of strategies to deliver that, and then having a number of tactics that help deliver those strategies. And that will help you have a list of key things that you're going to do that help deliver the overall strategies and the overall objectives. And everything that isn't on that list is best not done. And that leads us nicely on to discussing revenue models. And there are three main categories. Firstly, individual sales. Secondly, subscription-based services. And thirdly, where you make money out of the people visiting your site. So individual sales are the ones that we're all most familiar with, and they cover a huge range of different e-commerce categories. And this is basically where each time you're looking for a good or service, you start your search, you find a website that delivers what you're looking for, and you go on to purchase. And I'm sure you'll all be familiar with lots of retail e-commerce sites, clothing sites, a whole host you'd be familiar with. Subscription businesses are really a new trend that's becoming more and more popular for a number of reasons, and are really disrupting a lot of the individual sales categories. So a great example of this is Dollar Shave Club. This is traditionally a category that we bought on an individual basis, but the Dollar Shave Club saw an opportunity to sign people up over a longer period of time by using incredibly innovative marketing and high impact marketing, and also a really good value proposition for the consumer. And the real benefit of these subscription businesses is that they tend to tie customers in for a longer period of time, and as a result will generate much higher revenue per customer acquired. And because they're making more money from each customer, that gives them more money to recruit new customers. So again, it becomes a self-fulfilling process of recruiting more customers and keeping them for longer. The third revenue generation is where people are visiting your site to consume your content, and you can make money from those consumers, again, in a number of ways. The most typical way is by serving advertising on your site. So when these visitors to your site are consuming your content, they'll potentially click on that advertising, go through to a different person's website, and buy products from them. And the more people you can get to your website, the more money you can generate, because you'll either be rewarded on a cost per click basis, which is when someone actually clicks on the advert on your site, or on a cost per million or a cost per thousand basis, which is the more people that come to your site, the more eyeballs see your adverts, and you make money for each one of those. And it's interesting, there's a few different layers that kind of add complexity to these revenue generation models as well. So freemium is a good example. This is where the initial offering is free, but then additional goods and services are added on top that the customer is asked to pay for. And again, a couple of good examples of this would be Dropbox, the software as a service, where the user comes in and gets a certain amount of storage for free, and then once they've seen the value of that, they are willing to pay extra to get more storage to make the service more valuable. Another example would be in-app purchases. Again, often the initial user experience in the initial game is free, but to get maximum value out of the product, the app will ask the customer to pay a small additional fee, and by that time they're bought into the value of it and are willing to do so. The other thing to note is that there's quite a lot of blurring of the lines between these three different business models. So for example, Amazon again does offer individual sales, but it also offers a subscription model of Prime, where you don't get your goods as part of that subscription, but you do get your delivery taken care of. There's also lots of clothing businesses that offer you the opportunity to either buy their product as a subscription, where you get a regular delivery of the certain products. So say, for example, there's lots of socks subscription businesses where you get a new pair of socks each month, and they offer that as a subscription or as a standalone purchase. So it's all about working out which of these either individual business models works best for you, or working out how to blend them together to get the maximum amount of revenue per customer. There are also some potential pitfalls along the way of this transition from traditional retailer to a more e-commerce focused retailer. One of these is approaching the change with your existing resource and existing mindset. So we mentioned that Argos is a great example of how they managed to do it, but that transition wasn't necessarily smooth. So when they first started trying to do it, they were kind of dabbling in e-commerce, but they still had the core of their business focused on how to drive as many sales as possible through the stores. And it wasn't until they were almost at the point of collapse where that real burning platform was created for them to take the bold step of really backing everything to do with e-commerce and then thinking about how the stores and how the existing infrastructure can support that. So it's, again, really important to be clear on what your priorities are and whether e-commerce is really leading things, and also how that works together with the existing offering. Secondly, there can be a lack of familiarity with the business model. So there are lots of similarities in retail between traditional retail and e-commerce. For example, understanding what the consumer wants, how you merchandise your product in a way that makes it easy to find. But often the implementation of that and some of the particular examples of it are very different when you get into an e-commerce world. And so it's important that businesses recognize that and employ the right type of expertise, either internally into their business or by partnering with external agencies or doing joint ventures with different businesses to make sure they have real e-commerce expertise and real understanding of the e-commerce business model to give themselves the best chance of success. And thirdly, there can be a lack of insight into the capital investment required to move to e-commerce. This is both from an initial setup point of view, but also from an ongoing operation point of view. So from the initial setup, it can be very expensive to build new websites and create the infrastructure required to support them. And secondly, from an operations point of view, there can be lots of additional costs that aren't necessarily foreseen from the outset. So for example, from the outside looking in, it may look that on the face of things, actually, you don't need very many employees to run a successful e-commerce site, and it should be reasonably cheap to send the product from your warehouse to the end consumer. But actually, when you get into the detail of that, you can find that to get people converting in the way that you want, you actually need a very high level of customer service that can require a very high number of highly skilled customer service people that has a significant cost associated with it. And going to the delivery example, again, people might purchase in a slightly different way online. For example, buying two products that are the same, just in slightly different sizes, seeing which one fits best and sending one of them back. So while the business model might have accounted for just having to handle the cost of sending the product to the consumer, they actually should have been factoring the cost of sending product to the consumer and having it returned. So these are just two examples of how knowing how e-commerce businesses work compared to more traditional businesses can help you foresee some of the investment you're going to require. We're now going to look at the different e-commerce solutions available, and we're going to start by looking at a bespoke solution. So this is effectively where you design exactly how you want your website to look and operate, including everything from homepage layout, category infrastructure, what the individual product pages will look like, what the checkout process will be. It might include what pop-ups come up throughout the user journey, and it can even include some back-end stuff of how the data is captured and analysed. And the advantages of this are that it's an incredibly tailored solution that can help you deliver exactly what it is that you think your consumers value most. It also allows you the ability to test things, often in an A/B method, where you test two different solutions and choose which one, and you monitor the data to decide which one works best and implement that across your operation, and then make the changes that come out of all those different iterative tests. It also works well in organizations that are highly sophisticated and, crucially, that have a really good understanding of what their business model is and what they're trying to achieve through their e-commerce model. The downsides are that it can be very expensive, as there's a huge amount of customization and development work required. Appliances online are a great example of how effective this can be. They were started about 16 years ago when a gentleman in the UK was in the pub with one of his friends and bet him £1 that he could completely revolutionise the way that white goods like dishwashers and washing machines are sold. 14 years after that, he sold or floated his business for £1.2 billion as a result of getting this e-commerce solution absolutely right. Another solution is a hosted solution. This is basically an out-of-the-box solution, and the best example, or a good example, is Shopify. But as with anything, there are also some disadvantages. And the key disadvantages of the hosted solution are that it can be difficult to scale the platform. So I mentioned that it's very good if you've got a simple offering of 1 or 2 products. But if your business grows and your offering grows to multiple products across multiple categories, it can sometimes be very difficult to structure that within a hosted solution. Another way your business might grow is internationally. And again, sometimes it can be difficult to have multiple storefronts in different countries under the same website URL using a hosted solution. There's also limited customization, both from a site functionality point of view. So again, it might not be possible to have the particular product display functionality that you're looking for or pop-up that you're looking for. And secondly, in terms of integrating your website with your existing or your other back-end systems, so things like ERP systems, that might be difficult to do using the hosted solution and whatever back-end provider you're using. And thirdly, costs, because there are transaction fees and monthly fees associated with using hosting solutions. And so as your business grows, using a hosted solution at some stage may well not be the most efficient way of doing things. The next solution is what's called an off-the-shelf solution. And this is where you typically buy, but they're sometimes free to begin with, going back to that freemium model, a package from a provider like Magento or WooCommerce, and you get a website that is customizable within a certain set of parameters. And this is often better for more complex projects than the ones where you might use a hosted solution. So a good example of this is where you've got several different products across a range of different categories, and the categorization and structuring of those products to make them as shoppable as possible isn't supported by a hosted solution, whereas you can get it from these off-the-shelf solutions. They're also more adaptable. So again, there are a range of different plugins that you can add into them, and the scope of those different plugins is greater in this solution. The thing you need to be aware of is that the hosting and the ongoing support of these off-the-shelf solutions is something that needs to be taken care of internally by the website owner, and so there's additional resource and costs associated with that. So effectively, this is a nice halfway house between the two solutions that I spoke about earlier. So as your business grows from potentially being a single or limited offering business, and hosting is the most appropriate solution for you, but you're not quite ready to take the step of going to a fully bespoke solution and incur all the costs and complication associated with that, an off-the-shelf solution might be the nice stepping stone to continue to support your growth. As with everything else, you also have to make decisions about whether you want to do this internally or use external resource to do it. And so now we're going to look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of having your e-commerce site provided by internal resource. So the advantages are that if you have the skills and the capability to do this, it can be a low-cost way of getting things up and running. It can also be a very quick and easy way of getting your initial proposition into the market and tested quickly. The disadvantages are that if you don't have the sufficient skills, and as a result you don't produce a website that has the hygiene factors in place and provides the service that your customers are expecting, then this can massively undermine your value proposition and as a result damage your brand. Secondly, if it's not your core competency, then your attention may be drawn away from things that are more important to your business and that you're more capable of delivering. So it's a good general principle to focus on the things that you're really excellent at, and then look for other people to help you on the things where they're better. Next, we're going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of an in-house team when you're building your own website. So again, the same advantages of increased control, where you can really tailor it to exactly what you're looking for, and also continually optimize that over time. And linked to this is the second advantage of it being relatively high speed. So you've got control over what you're wanting to do, and you can make changes at high speed, which is really what you're looking for being able to test lots of different versions and see which ones work, and then continually iterate to get to the best solution over time. And thirdly, the ability to alter all stages of the development, even after the development's happened. So again, this isn't something, or this is much harder to do if you don't have the internal resource, because you constantly have to be going back to the internet provider or the e-commerce provider to help you with that. Disadvantage, again, if you don't have the expertise to do it, it can damage the overall brand. And secondly, it requires a different type of management to manage an internal team. And if you don't have that skill set, it can compromise the completion of the project. So the type of project management that's often used for IT projects is what's called agile management, where small projects are broken off into bite-sized chunks, and then they're delivered over a short period of time, and then moved on to the next one or revisited to optimize further. The alternative to having an in-house e-commerce team is outsourcing it to a third-party e-commerce provider. The advantages of this are that you get the tailor-made skill for the project you're looking for, as that's exactly what the agency is there to provide. They're driven to a deadline, so you can make sure things are delivered on time and in full. And you can also really accurately define the exact specification of what you're looking to do and make sure that's what the third-party provider delivers. The disadvantages are that it can be very difficult to find an appropriate partner, and you're also putting a huge amount of faith in an external part of your business. And so that whole process of finding the right blend of talent and skills and understand your business model and understand your business culture can be quite a difficult process. The second thing is it can be quite expensive because again there's uncertainty involved in the process, and so the provider may well want to make sure that they are guaranteeing that they're going to generate enough income from your piece of work, and so the overall upfront costs can often be expensive for these types of work. So as I mentioned, it can be very difficult to choose the right partner, so it's important that we get it right. And these are some of the things that we should be looking for when choosing that partner. So it's really important they've got a varied set of skills, because ideally you want to be able to get all the skills you're looking for from one provider. So for example, you'd be hoping that they've got a really good understanding of all the back-end execution of your website and the hosting requirements. You'd hope they've got a great understanding of consumer user experience and user design, and also are really well versed in all the different conversion rate optimization tactics that we mentioned before. And then looking at the bottom left image, it's also really important that they document all aspects of the specification at the specification stage. So you want to have real clarity on what you're asking the vendor to do right at the outset, so that if anything does change after that, that's when changes can often become expensive and delay the product. So it's incredibly important that both sides, both you and the vendor, are really clear on exactly what this project is going to deliver, and any uncertainties are ironed out at that stage. Then the other two key things really go hand in hand. First of all, they've got a proven track record of delivering projects that are similar to yours. And secondly, that they've got a client base that shares some similarities with your organisation. Because this is basically the best and the easiest way of getting an approximation of whether they're going to be able to do a good job to do the type of project you're looking for. Because fundamentally, have they done it before to the standard that you think is acceptable? Because often an agency may be brilliant at doing a simple single product site, but the skills required to do either a multi-product offering or even a subscription business may be very different. And also, the skills required to deal with a big business versus a small business can be totally different too. So we've spoken about the importance of getting the specification process right, and also about managing this process through. And this slide goes into a bit more detail on that. So, as previously mentioned, it's incredibly important to get really clear on what it is that you're looking for the project and the e-commerce site to deliver. And this goes right back to making sure you're thinking about your value proposition, what is it that your customers value from you more than others, and then making sure that the project delivers the specification that delivers that. So once you're crystal clear on that specification, you then move into the build phase. And again, because these projects can be very big and very long, it's useful to break it down into bite-sized chunks. So start with a particular part of the project, deliver that, look at how it's been done, feedback at that stage, make sure everyone's happy about it, and then move on to the next stage. And then repeat that process all the way through the project until all of the specifications have been delivered. So the next stage is looking at the specific stages that we need to go through to build the site. So step one is about mapping out the site. So this is really understanding all the different pages that you're going to need on the site and how they relate to each other. So really simply, you'll have a home page leading into a category page, often leading into product pages. That's kind of that flow. Then you'll have to think of how the cart then leads through to the checkout and the flow of those pages. And then you'll have other pages like terms and conditions, contact us, customer service. And again, you need to think about what are all those pages that need to be included and how do they all link together. Next, move on to wireframing. And so for each one of those pages we've mentioned there, you need to lay out what's as referred to as a wireframe of where all the different elements of the page go. So things like where's the lead image going to be, where's the copy going to be beside it, where's the drop down of the more detailed information on the product going to be. Then once you've got those wireframes clear and everyone's happy with them, you then move on to concepts. And this is where you start kind of colouring in the lines, I guess, and putting in the pictures that make your website different to all the competition. And again, once you're happy with that, you move on to a first draft phase where you'll get to see, by this stage, a really quite worked up version of what the website's going to look like. And again, once you're happy, you move on to the final stage, which is about encoding and effectively turning those pictures and functionality into all the coding language that makes it all work. It's also incredibly important to make sure you pick the right domain name. So what's the website going to be called? And effectively there's two key things you want to be delivering here. Firstly, is it memorable? So does it help stick in people's minds? And as a result, that'll make it much easier for you to grow brand awareness, because once someone's heard about it and become aware of you, it sticks in their mind. And then secondly, is it searchable? So again, that's partly how memorable it is, but also includes things like how easy is it to spell? How many competitors in that type of area with misspellings could there be close to you? So getting those two things right makes it much easier and much more likely you'll be successful. So earlier when we spoke about conversion rate optimization, we mentioned checkout as part of that. And the checkout is probably the most important part of conversion rate optimization. So where people actually hand over their hard-earned money to you. And the key things you need to get right in this process are, ideally your checkout should be multi-currency, so that it can be used in lots of different countries to give you the best possible chance of growing your business internationally. Secondly, it should be multi-card commerce. So you want to, again, make the opportunity as big as possible so that people can use as many of the different cards that they may have. So you're removing all the potential barriers at that stage of the process. Thirdly, it needs to have tokenization. This is a technical thing that makes people's very valuable data to do with their credit cards safe while it's being transported around the internet. And fourthly, it needs to be designed in the right way and also have an adaptable design so that you can test different designs to get the best user experience and maximize the conversion rate. Another key consideration is how all of this site design works across different devices. Because as we know, people are browsing the internet on more and more devices now, whether it's a mobile phone, a tablet, or a traditional desktop. And so you need to make sure that all of the designs work well on all of those different devices. And it's also important to understand how people typically use those different devices in different ways. So at the moment, it's still fair to say that a lot of research is done on mobile phones, and then people often convert to desktop or laptops to make the final conversion. However, that trend is definitely blurring, and people are now more and more willing to make transactions on their mobile phones, often through the use of a single-click checkout. So you need to make sure that, as I say, that you understand how each of these different sections look on these different devices. And there's some good tools available to help you do it. So these softwares shown help you see what that looks like on different devices. Another important thing to consider is the back end that supports all of these e-commerce sites. So if you've got multiple front-facing e-commerce sites, potentially in different countries, it's important that they're all supported by a communal backend. So for example, on the Royal and Awesome Golf brand, we've got websites in the UK, America, Australia, and we also sell our product through Amazon Marketplace, and all of those different websites draw on the same stock. So it's important that we've got one database of stock that knows the exact stock holding, so that we can communicate with all those different platforms so that we don't sell stock that we don't have. This database will also need to be hosted somewhere. And the database will also include information like product images and all the images and videos that are supported on your site. And some of these files can be massive. And so if you've only got a small number of them, it's possible to centrally host that database. However, if you've got lots of them or they're big files, you often need to use what's called a content delivery network to help get these files out around the internet, so that when people are viewing one of your international sites or even viewing your products through a marketplace like Amazon, they can quickly see that image or that video without it taking a long time to load. So choosing the right hosting platform both minimizes your cost and also maximizes the performance of your different websites.
So there's a number of ways you can actually see how a website might look on different devices, including mobile and desktop. One of the most straightforward ways is actually just to inspect using Google Chrome. So if we just right click and go down to inspect, we have this option up here, toggle between the different devices, and we just click on that, and then we can see what this website looks on a mobile device. It's a very straightforward way of just sense checking any of your device rendering and different things like that. It allows you to understand things like tapping. It allows you to understand how your website might look just to the standard user on different devices. Again, all we have to do is right click, go to inspect, and then press the toggle icon up here. And that will jump between the different types of devices we might possibly be interested in. So that's a very quick and easy way to see how your devices impact on your website itself.
A really important part of this process are the payment providers. These are the people who provide the software that sits behind the website, that takes the payment details from the customers, processes the transaction, and then passes the payment on to the retailer. And they do all this in a safe and secure way that are trusted by shoppers. Just imagine how difficult it would be if you were having to do all that coding of this new process, passing on that really sensitive data yourself in the coding of your website. And so this is a really good example of where it's best to outsource that bit of software engineering to these proven experts that know what they're doing and that people trust. Now let's take a look at the different payment types available. So obviously there's things like credit card, debit cards, and e-wallets. But within each of these, there's also different providers. So you've got the likes of American Express, MasterCard, and Visa. And you'll sometimes see on different websites that some of these are available and some of them aren't. And why is that? Well, the key reason is that each of these providers apply different terms and conditions, and crucially different fees, to the people using their product. So American Express is often the one that you won't be able to use. And the reason for that is that their fees are higher than some of the competition. So every time a retailer or a customer places a sale through an e-commerce site using an American Express card, the charge for that retailer will be higher than the charge if they were using a Visa card, and even higher than if they were using a debit card. So these are things that retailers will often consider about which types of card they want to accept based on the costs that they know they'll be charged by the provider. The other interesting thing is that there are sometimes different category norms between different categories. So for example, you may well have booked a flight recently and you've seen the standard price of your flight, and then if you want to use a credit card, there's an additional fee. This is because that airline is passing on the fee that the credit card charges them onto the consumer, in this case you. Whereas if you go to a clothing website, it's very unlikely that you'd be asked to pay an additional fee to use a credit card. So again, it's important to understand all these different nuances so that you can either decide to pass the cost on to your consumers or make sure it's built into your overall cost structure. And again, it's about getting a balance right between providing the best possible and most convenient service to your customers, but also making sure you do it in a profitable way. So we've looked at how payments are taken from the consumers to the retailer. Now let's look at how payments are made between the retailer and the payment providers. So there are typically some common terms and conditions associated with this, and they kind of fall into three categories. There's, first of all, the length of time it takes to get payment from the payment provider after the sale's been made. There's also the percentage fee they're going to take for each of those transactions. And the third thing to consider is, in the event of a return or a complaint, how much of the fee is clawed back to the end customer. And these are all things that you want to weigh up when you're choosing which payment provider you want to use, and pick one that best aligns with your business objectives. The other key consideration is how these different payment methods fit the markets you're planning on operating in, and how they'll also fit the markets you plan on growing into. Because there are different consumer understandings and consumer expectations in different markets. For example, in some countries, the vast majority of customers pay with a Visa or credit card, where in other developed markets like Germany, there's a much higher percentage of cash on delivery, where people actually pay for the product when they receive it, rather than when they make the initial purchase. And again, these are things that's important for you to understand so you can plan accordingly. So we've already spoken a little bit about payment gateways. And here's just a few examples of some of the options available. And it'd be worth taking a little bit of time for you to go and have a look at each of these and look at the different pros and cons of each of them and deciding which is most relevant for you. Now let's take a look at what actually happens behind the scenes when a payment is being processed. This will also explain why sometimes when you're making a purchase, either online or at a cash register, you'll have inputted your PIN number and the card machine will be saying, dialing, processing payment, and it all takes a little bit of time. So this will help us understand what's going on while that time's being taken. So the customer gives their information to the merchant or the retailer. That information is then encrypted so that it can be safely passed around between these different people in a safe way. That information is then passed on to the acquirer who will be the likes of Visa and MasterCard. That information is then passed on to the network, where there's communication between the network and the bank to confirm that there are the funds available there. The information is then passed on to the token vault, where the encryption is decoded so that the information can clearly be seen. And then the information is passed back down the channel so that the merchant finally gets recognition that yes, there are funds there and the process can be completed. So with all this money coming in and out of the website, it's important that it's joined up with an accounting package. Because we want to be able to see how much money is coming in terms of sales, but also how much money is going out in terms of the fees we've mentioned that go to the service or the payment providers, any costs going out in terms of refunds, and also the costs of each sale in terms of cost of good, and also any variable marketing costs. All of these things, it's ideal if we can see them in one place so we can get a clear view of how much margin we're making per sale. And there are different ways of providing this join up between the financial information of your website and the accounting packages that sit behind it. The most simple way and labour-intensive way is through manual data exports. So this is where you simply download spreadsheets out of the back end of your website, transfer them across to whatever your accounting software is, and upload them there and manage it through that process. Next, we can use automatic pieces of software. So this is if you're using a payment provider like PayPal, there's a good chance that that'll have a pre-existing connection with a major accounting package like Sage Pay. The third way is developing a custom API. This is where you get your website speaking directly to the accounting package through a custom-made piece of code that helps that process happen. And so again, like everything else, you need to decide which of these different methods is most appropriate for the size, scale, and complexity of your business. Now let's look at the full 9-step process for an e-commerce transaction. So it starts with the customer placing an order. And then that order is passed from the merchant or the retailer onto the payment gateway. The payment gateway then forwards the transaction on to the payment processor, who then forward it on to the credit card's issuing bank. So that's whoever you bank with and whoever you have an account with, and asks them for an authorization request. That bank then hopefully grants you the authorization, which is then passed back to the payment gateway. It was then passed back on to the merchant, and then the merchant fulfills the order, so sends the product back out to the customer. And all of this process happens in literally 2 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jack Preston. I'm a data scientist working within marketing analytics. I have an MSc in business analytics and have worked at both small-scale startups and large corporates. Before we can begin to understand data, we need to define it. Essentially, data is information in raw or unorganized forms such as letters, numbers, symbols that refer to or represent conditions, ideas, or objects. Data is potentially limitless, and it is important to recognize the challenges this poses. Let's think about some of the core challenges related to data. Well, the first challenge is amount of data available. The second challenge is that of interpretation. With the abundance of data, we can try and manipulate it the way that we want and try to get it to tell the story that we want to as well. This can lead to falsehoods, which is one of the big issues with analysing data. The third challenge is security. This is becoming a fundamental issue in terms of privacy. There have been plenty of examples where data has been compromised and was leaked onto the internet. So it's crucial to think about the way we store and secure data. The fourth challenge concerns relevance. Data, quite frankly, is unequivocally linked to time. With so much data, it can become irrelevant quite quickly. Today, real-time data is actually becoming something that people, particularly consumers, expect, so we need to react very quickly. The accuracy of the data is another key challenge. How accurate do we make the data? And is it capturing all the factors and variables that we want it to? And then finally, coming back to the point about relevance, data is time-bound. It is important to make sure that you use the data quickly, almost in real time, as that is becoming an essential factor in business today. Largely speaking, organisation systems often make it difficult to do that. Now, let's think about some of the more common key misconceptions when thinking about your data. The first misconception is that you need lots and lots of data to do analysis. This comes back to statistics. A larger data set means more meaningful results. Sometimes having a massive pool of data sets actually can be more complex and confusing, and the common phrase analysis paralysis can prove true. So think about that and how you might not necessarily need to focus on massive data sets. The second misconception is the idea that time will tell. However, historical data may prove to be less valuable upon further reflection. Relying on old data may not be the best predictor of the way things are going to happen in the future. Beware of this when evaluating your data. The third misconception is that correlation equals causation. Correlation basically means that when one thing happens, another thing also tends to happen. So the two things are correlated together. The problem with that is that it can be difficult to discern why the second thing happened. For example, if you make a change and customers respond, are they responding because of the change you made or because of something else in the customer's psyche? When analysing data, make sure you don't make assumptions about causation. Ignoring the wider context is another common mistake when dealing with data. This occurs when you try to look at data through too narrow a lens. Understanding context is essential to make sure you've got the wider, holistic picture around what the data is saying. Another misconception is that percentage and percentage points are the same. In fact, they're completely different. Be careful about that because you can experience different results if you just look at percentage against percentage points. A final misconception is the average trap. This can often occur when you have large data sets. The problem with average or median is that you don't truly understand what's happening in the various data pools. So you might miss out on vital insights, or you might miss out on what the data is really telling you. However, if the standard deviation from the median is very, very narrow, then the average becomes more reliable. These are just a few key misconceptions to watch out for to make sure that you don't fall into data traps when analysing your data. Standard deviation is a great way to overcome some of those core biases that you might come across when analysing data. Now let's turn our attention to data collection and thinking specifically about some of the key considerations about collecting data. Essentially, data collection is the process of gathering and measuring information on targeted variables in an established, systematic fashion, which then enables you to answer relevant questions and evaluate outcomes. By following best practices for data collection, you can ensure the trustworthiness and better use of the collected data. Qualitative data is effectively a depth of insights that are captured through methodologies such as interviews, for example. You should apply qualitative approaches when looking for deeper insights on already established trends or statistics, or to fill gaps in data collection that can't be filled by quantitative methods. Common qualitative data collection techniques include interviews, focus groups, observation, self-study, ethnography, and action research. Quantitative analysis is looking at pure metric data to unearth insights. This can be anything from thinking about your management information that you have within the core of your organization, sales figures, or the number of complaints are good examples of quantitative measurements. You can also look at data in terms of the customer journey from a quantitative point of view. Think about possible bottlenecks that exist within your customer journey and examine the metrics that show how many people drop off at different stages to try to improve the journey. This is a very useful and unbiased way to use quantitative metrics to drive business forward. Common quantitative data collection techniques include questionnaires, scales, and physiological measurements. We will now take a look at some of the recent or current trends around data collection. You can collect data in a number of ways, but some of the more conventional ways can be somewhat inefficient and non-responsive from a customer perspective. Some of the more recent trends in data collection include web analytics, mobile market research methods, biometric market research techniques, prediction markets, virtual shopping, social listening, and the Internet of Things, or IoT. It's no longer enough to simply deliver a survey through someone's mailbox and then expect that person to complete and return it to you. You need to think carefully about what type of data you are looking for and at what point in time you capture it. When collecting data, you need to consider sample size, operational issues, accuracy of information, and bias. First of all, you need to ensure that you have the appropriate sample size. If the sample size is wrong, the resulting data isn't reliable. For example, if the sample is too small, then some of the key insights may be missed, as we have made decisions on data that is not representative of the size of the issue we are trying to analyze. The second issue when collecting data concerns operational issues. Occasionally there's a difference between putting a plan down on page and implementing that plan in reality. It is important to develop ways to overcome these operational issues. You need to be clear at the beginning of the process exactly who you're looking to target. The accuracy of the information is very important. If data is inaccurate, it can lead to difficulties for analysts analysing the data, and they can derive insights that are inaccurate since the starting point data wasn't accurate to begin with. Always remember that all data collection has bias. Therefore, try to be aware of potential biases in your collection and overcome them as best as possible. Simply being aware of bias in data can help you to understand the data better, particularly when it does not align with predicted results. In general, good data is accurate, complete, consistent, unique, and timely. Accuracy and completeness are essential. If there are big gaps in the data, you won't be able to draw big insights. You also need a certain consistency within your dataset. To draw insights, you want the data to be unique. In other words, you want it to be something that nobody else knows about. So you need to think about how you can capture things that you think only you have access to. And finally, as previously mentioned, good data needs to be relevant and time-bound. In general, bad data is inaccurate, conflicting, irrelevant, misleading, outdated, and incomplete. If the data is inaccurate, the insights based on that data will also be inaccurate. If the data is conflicting, your data set will tell you different things, leading to confusion. If the data is irrelevant, you're simply wasting your time analysing it. Remember to capture only what you need. Only ask for things that will be important to the questions you're seeking to answer. Outdated data can offer limited and often irrelevant details, again leading to confusion and inaccuracies. Finally, if the dataset is incomplete, it will be difficult to discern correct or reliable insights from it. Some common sources of bad data quality include input data, processing, data identification, information integration, usage, aging, and organisational quality. Let's take a look at two common sources of bad data. How is the data being input in the first place? What are the ways in which that data could start to turn bad? At what point do you need to start to refresh that data to ask the question again? Be careful, however. If you ask too often, you'll simply annoy your customers. Conversely, if you ask too infrequently, your data may become irrelevant or too dated. Make sure that you understand the importance of getting the data right the first time. Another consideration is process quality. You need to have a robust way of being able to process data and identify when the data is going wrong. Also consider where you store the data. You may have captured a wealth of data in one system, but if it doesn't translate onto another, you will encounter problems. Therefore, the usefulness of that data is compromised.
The amount of data that's produced every day is increasing rapidly. Data processing enables us to make sense of this data. It can be defined as the collection and manipulation of items of data on a computer to produce meaningful information. For a company or a business, this task is extremely important, as it helps to organize the information collected and makes it easier to understand. Data processing involves a number of microprocesses that are undertaken by analysts. Data validation. Check the accuracy and quality of the source data. For example, verify metrics and remove old and incorrect data entries. Data sorting. Arrange the data in a meaningful way. Data summarization. Highlight interesting features or findings from the data. Data aggregation. Gather statistical data together and display in summary form in tables or metrics. Data analysis. Organize, evaluate, and interpret data using analytical and logical reasoning. Data reporting. Transform data and information into insights to improve business performance. Data classification. Organize data into categories for efficient use and easy retrieval. When it comes to processing data, analysts should follow a number of best practices. Use advanced analytic techniques. Analysts can leverage sophisticated statistical analysis capabilities to help identify outliers and missing values that can skew data. Scrub data to build quality into the existing process. This involves incorporating data cleansing into your data flow and removing invalid data to ensure your data is as robust as possible. Shape data using flexible manipulation techniques. It's important to shape your source data as you see fit. This essentially involves merging, transforming, and aggregating your data from multiple tables into one wide table. Share metadata across data management and analytics domains. By having a common metadata layer, you can repeat your data preparation processes in a consistent way. This should result in more accurate models and more transparent data. Let's consider some data processing challenges. Multiple systems. From a technological perspective, using multiple systems can be very challenging. If you work for a big organization, you'll know that multiple systems have probably been used over time. Merging these data sets at a later point can be so difficult that it may not even be worth your time doing it, but ultimately you will want to create one version of the truth. Time lags. If multiple systems are in operation and conflicting data sets exist, there may be a time lag between the data from the two systems, which analysts need to consider when processing the data. Inaccurate data. Inaccurate data at the capture phase or even at the manipulation or analysis phase can cause problems. Analysts need to watch out for inaccurate data and use their intuition and insight to investigate further if data simply doesn't make sense. Data cleansing issues. Analysts need to be able to come up with clean data and be confident about the integrity of their data. Cleansing data to remove inaccuracies is an essential component of successful data processing. For example, updated email subscriber lists. Data processing also brings a number of security challenges. These can arise from four main areas. Physical. There is the physical challenge of storing data, be it virtual or paper data, and where it is held. Personnel. It's important to consider who has access to your data. Is it available on a need-to-know basis, or does everyone in the organization have access to it? It's usually better to restrict access to those who need it. Procedural. Analysts need to be aware of processing best practices and privacy policies, and think about the best ways of giving people access to the data and responding to data requests. Technical. Technical challenges can arise if people have difficulty using the data processing systems or software in place. In addition, transferring data from one system to another to conduct analysis can be very challenging from a security perspective.
Web analytics involves collecting, measuring, and analyzing website data. Web analytics tools can provide lots of useful information about the origin of website traffic, how website users navigate and interact throughout a website, what content and web pages they're most engaged with, and how they exit the site. Marketers can then use this data to optimize the performance of their channels and websites by taking data-led decisions. These are actions we take to improve performance based on our understanding of the data we've recorded. In other words, the data is leading the decision. While it's best practice to follow data-led decisions, we must always remind ourselves to make sure we test and verify the data. Web analytics tools provide information about the origin of website traffic, how users navigate and interact throughout a website, what content and web pages they're most engaged with, and if they take valuable actions on the site, known as conversions. These include purchases or contact requests. Using this data, marketers can optimize channel and website performance with data-led decisions. A number of analytics tools are available on the market today. Some of them are free, and some of them require a paid subscription. Paid analytics products and free analytics products will differ in terms of support, features, and functionality. Some examples of available analytics packages include Google Analytics and Google Analytics 360, which are part of the Google Marketing Platform, Adobe Analytics, Woopra, Kissmetrics, WebTrends, and Watomo. The market leader and most commonly used analytics program is the free version of Google Analytics, or GA as it's sometimes known. The paid version of GA, called Google Analytics 360, offers some additional functionality in terms of report validity and sample sizes. But it's mainly for websites that receive more than 10 million page views per month. For the vast majority of websites, the free version of Google Analytics is perfectly fine. Because of its functionality and widespread adoption in the market, Google Analytics is seen by many marketers as the single source of truth for website traffic, engagement, and conversion data. Web analytics is a valuable way to deduce the story behind the data in order to gain valuable insights and enhance business performance. Web analytics can help a digital marketer understand their customers better by providing insights into who the customers are and their interests, conversion challenges, enhanced appreciation of what consumers like or dislike, understanding of how to improve user experience for the consumer. One of the real values of web analytics is that it allows you to deduce the story behind the data in order to gain valuable insights and enhance business performance. But how exactly does this lead to commercial returns? Web analytics can help you understand your customers better. It tells you who they are, where they're coming from, and what their interests are. It tells you about their demographics and location. It also helps reveal any conversion challenges that might exist on your website. It helps you grasp what content and products your consumers like or don't like, and how they interact on your website. You can use all this information to improve the consumer experience on your site and optimize the channels that consumers use to visit your website.
When looking specifically at measuring online activity, a number of web analytics tools are available in the market today. Some of them are free, but others require a paid subscription. Paid analytics products and free analytics products will differ in terms of support, features, and functionality. Some examples of analytics packages that are available include Google Analytics. Google Analytics, or GA, is the most widely used free web analytics tool with Google Ads and SEO integrations, engagement metrics, and e-commerce functionality. Google Analytics 360. Google Analytics 360 offers premium web analytics. It has similar features to the free version but offers larger data handling capabilities, greater reporting accuracy, and integrations with 360 Display and Video Campaign Manager. Adobe Analytics. Adobe Analytics is a premium web analytics tool that offers multi-channel integrations, tag management, voice and IoT integrations, and custom variables. Woopra. Woopra offers customer profiling, journeys, segments, and real-time analytics. Kissmetrics. Kissmetrics can be used for activity tracking, A/B testing, reporting, segmentation, and design management. WebTrends. WebTrends is used by analysts for predictive behavioral targeting, multivariate testing, visitor profiles, and segmentation. HubSpot Analytics. HubSpot Analytics can be used to analyze user journeys, conversion funnels, landing page optimization, and traffic sources. The market leader and most commonly used analytics program is the free version of Google Analytics. Because of its functionality and widespread adoption in the market, Google Analytics is seen by many marketers as the single source of truth for website traffic, engagement, and conversion data. It is effective at measuring digital marketing efforts across all channels. Of course, websites aren't the only way people access the internet. We also have to consider the importance of mobile customers and mobile apps. As well as collecting website data, you can collect data from mobile apps using Google Analytics SDK or Software Development Kit. You'll need to implement and configure additional code to view mobile app data in the Google Analytics interface. If you are tracking apps, you should note this requirement with your app development team. It's not a task marketers generally do themselves, but it should be part of the brief to the app development team.
The concept of a single source of truth is essential for all analytics and measurement, as it is necessary to have a consensus on what data is used for decision making. A single source of truth is where you determine what the core business metrics that you can measure your activity against are. It can be your CRM or your web analytics tool. It's especially important to have a single source of truth as all digital platforms measure metrics differently. So you need to have a unifying set of metrics to measure different channel performance against. Other data sources can be measured against this single source of truth data in order to optimize activities in relation to your truth. This way, you are working towards an agreed data goal rather than a range of data sources that can measure actions differently. Using a web analytics tool such as Google Analytics as a single source of truth for conversion metrics enables you to gain a full understanding of the channel value and contribution to overall business goals. This is because all traffic, engagement, and conversion metrics can be read and analyzed side by side. However, if conversion data is reported truthfully in another platform, such as a CRM or e-commerce engine, it's important to test the variance between Google Analytics and the other single source of truth. One way of doing this is to divide the Google Analytics data by what's been reported by your other system, to see if you can confidently find a multiplier to bring that GA data in line with what's been reported in the other system. You may need to stress test the multiplier and find a reasonable compromise within an allowable variance across channels, months, or other dimensions.
A fundamental benefit of using analytics as part of your digital marketing efforts is that it helps you make informed, data-led decisions like when to increase media spend or to stop running activity on certain online channels. This in turn should help you run effective campaigns and drive better commercial performance. Other benefits include the ability to understand your users, the ability to gain insights from real customer activity, the ability to get closer to the customer, the ability to forecast using trends and patterns in customer behavior, accountability of media spend and resource allocation, higher conversion rates and enhanced return on investment, stronger focus, prioritization of resources. By measuring metrics over time in your web analytics software and noting percentage changes in metrics across set areas such as channels, devices, and locations, you can demonstrate that digital activity is working when compared to historical results when the results of the comparison show a positive change. From there, analysts can speculate and theorize about why these changes are occurring using the comparative data available to them. These hypotheses can be validated or disproven through testing by modifying conditions such as spend level, messaging, and price.
Now we're going to look at ways to use analytics to unearth insights. So our first step for this process is to choose our objective and to measure our data source. So our data source, obviously, in this instance is Google Analytics, just using the demo account. What we're interested in, what our objective is to understand what's happening with e-commerce conversions and e-commerce transactions. So our first thing we need to do, now that we have our objective set and we've decided on our data source, is to choose what segment or report we are going to be interested in. So for the majority of digital marketers, it will be the traffic report. So let's just go to acquisition, all traffic, and then channels. And that gives us the report that we're interested in. Next, we need to set our date range. So by default in things like Google Analytics, it's the last 7 days, but maybe let's take a longer date range. Let's look back to September and see what that looks like. So we can see over that period, there has been $250,000 worth of revenue generated across all these channels, bearing in mind that our objective that we are measuring against is revenue, or indeed e-commerce transactions. So we're just going to sort by that just to see, is there anything of interest or note here? So what we can see is that organic is driving by far the highest number of visitors, not the same level of revenue. So now that we have a little bit more insight into what's going on in our report, we need to start looking at comparable data sets. So these are things that are of interest to us in terms of another data set that we can compare this data against to try and see where the friction is, see where the insight is. And let's look at a comparable date range, because it's always interesting to look at date range to look at seasonality. So what I've done is I've selected compare to previous year and apply. And we can see across all our channels here, we are down 33% in visitors. We are down almost 90% in revenue, 85% in transactions, and our e-commerce conversion rate is down 78%. And interestingly, because this is the outlier again, all of our engagement metrics are up. So our bounce rate is down significantly, our pages per session is up almost 20%, and the average time on site is up almost 40%. So people are engaging far more with our content. There are fewer people engaging with our content, but they're engaging far more. So that would indicate that the quality of visitors has increased over the period. However, we have not managed to turn these quality engaged visitors into similar levels of revenue. So we might speculate that the conversion journey is a little bit more difficult this year, that maybe there aren't enough CTAs on the pages or ways to get to the cart, ways to add things to the cart. So that's our first hypothesis. And why this is important is, if engagement is up and all things were even, conversion rate will remain the same because we're driving more engaged visitors, but conversion rate has gone down too. So we have to speculate that there is an issue in getting to the cart. So now we've decided what the input may have been that is causing this outcome. The input is what causes this data to change. We're thinking it's something around the cart. It's something around the ability to convert. And now we're going to test to see if modifying this input either up or down will drive predictable outcomes based on what we expect to happen. So if we're thinking, let's make it easier to get to the cart, we predict that adding more CTAs, that adding more ways to add things to basket and things like that will result in more conversions. So that's our hypothesis. That's our testing roadmap. We've also looked at date range as a comparable data set to see what exactly does this data look like over comparable periods. And we have unearthed that engagement has increased, visitors are down, but unfortunately e-commerce conversion rate is also down, resulting in lower transactions and revenue. We speculate that because engagement has gone up, but conversion rate has gone down, that it's more difficult to convert. So we are going to test adding more CTAs or different ways to get to the cart to see, does that affect our quality visitors turning into quality customers.
Google Analytics is the most commonly used free analytics tool, and it's an excellent choice for most marketing needs. Some benefits of the standard free version of Google Analytics include the following. It's free, it's easy to implement and easy to install, it has a user-friendly interface, it offers customizable reports, dashboards, and data collection, it includes basic and advanced options, it offers seamless integration with other Google products, it offers post-click integration with non-Google traffic sources, including Facebook, Yahoo, and Bing. It provides extensive, valuable insights into web behavior. However, Google Analytics also has a number of limitations. It doesn't provide real-time data in downloadable historical reports. The free version is limited to 10 million hits per month. It offers limited customization. It defaults to last click attribution. It's not always 100% accurate. It's not as comprehensive at measuring the performance of top-of-the-funnel campaign activities such as premium display in Facebook, where there is a limited user visit and conversion data from these campaigns. However, despite these limitations, Google Analytics is a highly effective web analytics tool for marketers in most instances. The key basic terms for all analytics reporting are dimensions and metrics. Dimensions describe data. There are things such as country, channel, location, age, gender, and device used. Metrics measure data. Metrics might include visitor numbers, revenue, goal completions, and so on. We segment metrics using dimensions, for example, visits by device type, to get a complete picture. So we can see the total visitor metrics for a website segmented by the device category dimension, that is, desktop, tablet, or mobile users. This allows us to better understand the effectiveness and scale of each device in driving visits and conversions on the website. You should explore the metrics that are available to you and see how they can be segmented using dimensions to get a deeper understanding of your website traffic and customers. Metrics can be absolute metrics, for example, total clicks, total revenue, and so on. Metrics can also be relative metrics, that is, a metric that understands one metric's relationship to another metric. For example, conversion rate, which is the percentage of clicks that turn into conversions. Relative metrics are created by dividing one metric by another to get, for example, the conversion rate, goals divided by clicks, or cost per click, media spend divided by clicks. Relative metrics can help with forecasting as well as performance measurement. In web analytics, metrics can be broadly grouped into engagement and conversion metrics. Some common dimensions within Google Analytics include channel name, month, country, and device. Basically, the non-numerical descriptors of what you're reporting on are considered dimensions. There are a number of common engagement metrics within Google Analytics. Absolute engagement metrics include sessions, users, page views, and average session duration. Relative engagement metrics include percentage new sessions and pages per session. Conversion metrics are an extension of standard visitor metrics. They focus on telling the story behind the valuable actions that users can take on your website. These are generally actions that impact commercial performance, such as revenue totals, conversion rates, and so on. Google Analytics includes a number of common conversion metrics. They can all be viewed in the traffic reports, so you can see how much value each of the different channels is driving. Absolute conversion metrics include goals. These are a number of valuable actions taken on the site, including sales, leads, or downloads. Transactions. These are the number of individual sales or shopping basket items sold on an e-commerce website. Revenue. This is the monetary value of the e-commerce sales. Relative conversion metrics include conversion rate. This is the percentage of visitors that complete a goal or buy online. Cost per sale. This is the total sales divided by the total cost. You can start to determine the value of the campaigns from your different digital marketing channels by looking at the number of goals and transactions from each channel, the conversion rates, and the cost per conversion. With these 3 data points, you can decide if a channel is profitable in relation to its time and cost investment.
Remember that there are a number of data protection considerations associated with web analytics. As a result of regulations such as GDPR in the EU, tracking personally identifiable information, or PII, now requires explicit consent from the consumer. For example, you need to get consent if you are collecting cookie data from website visitors for analysis or in order to personalize advertising experiences. Many analytics programs anonymize usernames, IP addresses, and other PII. But you still need consent to share website visitor data anonymously with third parties, such as Google Analytics or with ad platforms. In relation to GDPR, you must manage personally identifiable information correctly and within the terms of the consent provided by your website visitors. Collecting PII as part of your analytics program and then mismanaging that information can risk a data breach for improper use of PII. To ensure this doesn't happen, your company should have a clear policy of guidelines in place detailing how the analytics data you collect is used and managed. This should include explicit opt-in visitor consent to track user visits, collect anonymous cookie data, and share anonymously with third parties, such as Google and Facebook, for personalization of ads. It's now time to consider how data should be reported to upper management. To begin with, there are a number of ways to report your insights and findings. Some of these include real-time access for management, regular updates, comprehensive reporting at specified points throughout the year, exception reporting, and so what analysis. What are upper management really looking for in order to make decisions quickly? Well, they want access to real-time tools that you can use to help them to make decisions on a daily or even hourly basis. You may also need to have weekly meetings or conference calls. You need to specify comprehensive reporting at specific times. Moreover, there needs to be that combination of real-time reporting versus bulk batch reporting to come up with different layers of insights. These all drive different decision-making processes. You also need to have exception reporting, because while there will always be regular analysis, you need to think about the more exceptional incidents. For example, if anything, you need to determine how an exception will be handled if it arises. So what analysis can be useful to stress test the impact and value of your recommendations and insights against common perceptions in the business. This is basically when you look at your results or recommendations and think, so what? What is the implication of the analysis to the business? Some of the best practices for reporting data to upper management include: distill the high-impact findings, insights, and actions into a presentation or document. Keep it simple. Make it visually appealing. Have both high-level and detailed reports to hand. And include both quantitative and qualitative results. However, be strategic in what you report to upper management. Don't dwell on the details. Guide the analysis, interpret the data for them, and provide insights. Use words and charts to describe results for non-analysts. Choose the most important data for them. You don't have to give them everything. And remember that sometimes less is more.
Data reporting tools allow analysts to extract and present data in different formats, such as in charts and tables, so that key information is easy to find, interpret, and action. You can use tools to visualize your data if that's appropriate, or to create printable reports. You can create reports that are interactive, which allow users to filter and sort the data, or reports that are static. Whatever way you want to present your data, data reporting tools can help you. Common data reporting tools include BERT, an open source data visualization tool, Jasper Reports, an open source Java reporting tool for creating printing documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, and so on, Pentaho, a data mining and visualization tool with dashboard capabilities, KNIME, a free and open source data analytics reporting and integration platform.
Data visualization is when you help people understand the significance of data by placing it in a visual context, like a chart, a table, or a graphic. Essentially, it helps to make big data understandable using patterns, trends, and correlations that might be undetected in text-based data. A word cloud is a good example of data visualization. You can also use infographics to help you interpret and identify in a visual way key trends that you're seeing within your existing dataset. This also enables you to highlight the key insights in a visually appealing way. So why is data visualization important? It enables you to make big data understandable, as patterns, trends, and correlations that might go undetected in text-based data can be exposed and recognized. Here are some of the more common tools used to visualize data. Tableau. This enables you to connect multiple data sources and visualize data in a powerful and exciting way. Microsoft Excel. You can use spreadsheet data as the source for charts and tables. Microsoft Power BI. You can create dashboards and interactive data visualizations with self-serve business capabilities. Google Data Studio. With this free tool, you can connect to a variety of data sources to visualize data on custom dashboards. And SAS Visual Analytics. This enables you to work with self-serve analytics, visualizations, dashboards, and reports. Here are some advantages of data visualization. You can visualize relationships between operational and business activities. You can identify and act on emerging trends. It's easy to share insights. And it's an effective way of communicating important information with non-analysts. Firstly, visualization enables you to visualize relationships between operational and business activities. It is very effective in joining the dots. It also really helps the organization to move forward and understand what you're trying to achieve. Simplicity is key within these data environments, and data visualization helps you to present insights in a simple manner. This, in turn, enables people to identify and act on emerging trends faster.
Let's look at visualizing some data using Excel. You can also use other tools like Tableau or Data Studio, but for this one, we're just going to use Excel. It's pretty straightforward and it's pretty ubiquitous. Almost everyone has it and knows how to use it. Like everything to do with analytics, the value of your visualization will be in the input data that you put in there in the first place. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at device traffic over the months of August to January, and we're going to actually look at it by month. And what we're going to be interested in will be things like the variations of e-commerce conversion rate, the number of new users, perhaps the revenue. But let's just download this table here. So I have, again, you always begin with our source data, and we need to have multiple totals. So we always begin with our source data, and we need to have multiple totals over time or with the comparative date range. So we're going to have multiple totals over time because each month will have a total and each month will have a device. So let's just export this data. So each month will have its own data and its own device. Let's look at turning this into something we can understand and that will make sense for our analysis. And one thing we can do is a pivot table here, and I'll show you why. So we're going to insert pivot table. Over in our left-hand menu, we are going to have our months of the year, and we're going to have our total number of users. We're also going to split this by device type. So we can see across our columns here, we split our total into tablet, mobile, and desktop because I've put device category in the columns field there, and then month of year in the row. So we have our month of year, which starts in August and ends in January, across the row section, and we have our desktop, mobile, tablet across in the column section. So a very easy way of making our first table. So let's just grab this, and underneath we will turn this into a chart very quickly, and just a straightforward chart. And again, it's definite data. So best practices would be that line charts are useful for showing data over time, and we can use relative metrics like cost per click or different things like that to combine the chart to show the variation and any correlation or any intersection between things like CPC or conversion rate with the number of visitors. And then things like bar charts can be used for totals. So in this case, we are doing totals, so we will do a bar chart. And this is what it's telling us in our recommended charts here. We can see that. Now, Now let's just go back to our pivot table here. I'm going to move this chart out of the way. And let's remove our device category. And we're just going to look at some metrics across the months. So we have our users here, and we have maybe our transactions. And let's create a calculated field to work out our conversion rate. If we pull in e-commerce conversion rate here, it gives us the sum of the e-commerce conversion rate, but that's no good to us because that's not what we want. We want the actual conversion rate. So let's create that conversion rate. We do this by clicking on pivot table tools, and then we go to field sets and items or calculated field in different variables, and we'll call this conversion rate. And our formula for conversion rate will be, say, transactions divided by users. And that gives us our conversion rate there. Now let's just turn this into a percentage. As you can see, pulling in the conversion rate, which is a relative metric, pulling any relative metric into the values area just adds it all up. So it's essentially adding up all of these conversion rates to get 10.43%. Where in actual fact, what we've done in this instance is worked out using a calculated field what this number of transactions divided by this number of users is in every single row, and that gives us our actual conversion rate. So for relative metrics, don't pull them into the values field, it doesn't work. So let's look at creating a table around this set of metrics. Okay. So let's just select our data here, and maybe we'll look at conversion rate against users. So it's always interesting to see, does the conversion rate go up when the user count goes up or goes down? Let's just go into insert. Sometimes good to check our recommended charts here, and we're able to see on our chart here, we have, so on our chart we've got our users as the bar and indeed our conversion rate as the line. Let's add in some data fields here. Right click, add data labels, and that gives us the values that these relate to. And likewise, click on the line and right click, and let's just add some data labels here too. So at this point, we're able to say, well, we were generating 60,000 users. And this is where anomalies and these type of charts help. We were generating 60,000 users in October at a 1.15% conversion rate. Not really too much difference in November, but the conversion rate is down significantly. And we can figure that out by looking at the change between the two. And the way we can do that is we'll create a formula here, just visually, equals, and it's the difference. So difference, just quickly for everyone to remember, is new minus old divided by old. And we'll just pull that down and make it a percentage. And we can see that there was an 89% drop conversion rate between October and November. And then because we went up, we actually doubled our conversion rate in December. It went up. So it's very important to have your actual data beside your comparative data, because otherwise it looks like this is a major victory, but in fact it's still down very significantly on previous months. It's just compared to that terrible month in November. So it's very important to keep your actual data beside your comparative data. So as a rule of thumb, when you're visualizing your data in Excel or Tableau or any other data visualization tool, select your data source. Ideally would have multiple totals over time, or indeed comparative change like the percentage difference we've just done there. We select the chart or method we want to use to represent that data. So bar charts are used for showing comparative totals or other dimensions for either a set period of time or a comparative period of time. Pie charts are useful, not so much. You may show the contribution of channel traffic. So it'll all add up to 100%, which will be your full pie chart, but 10% comes from paid search, 50% comes from organic search, 20% from referral, etc. So that's when a pie chart can be used. Be wary of pie charts because they don't always show the greatest insights. They look really nice, but actually they're not great for driving insights in the majority of cases. Far better off using line charts or bar charts. In this chart here, you can see that we have used a relative metric, which is conversion rate, against a static metric, which is total number of users. And we're able to try and compare the two, one on the primary axis and one on the secondary axis. So it's a very straightforward way of visualizing data in Excel to drive insights.
Reporting templates are pre-built reporting structures that users simply complete to create the report. They streamline processes but are limited in the scope of reporting as they are a pre-built solution, though some have limited customization functionality. Reporting dashboards provide a comprehensive snapshot of performance. They contain curated data, charts and tables rather than all the data. And they are specifically geared towards providing visual overviews of metrics and KPIs to management and non-analysts for the most part. They're an extremely useful way to quickly show performance and help management use data insights for better decision making. There are three main types of dashboards, each with different functions, data sets, insights, and visualizations. Operational. This is the most common type, showing a snapshot of real-time performance in different channels or parts of the business, useful for management updates. Analytical. This uses historical data to try to predict future trends using comparative tables, charts, pivot tables, and data drill downs, useful for analysts mapping trends and modeling outcomes. And strategic. This measures performance against KPIs to help decision makers choose actions that will deliver on strategic objectives. Strategic dashboards can contain a higher amount of words than other dashboards, as the audience can be senior management non-analysts, and words rather than raw data can be more effective in conveying the insight.
Dashboards are really useful tools for showing lots and lots of data in one view. It's a very useful way of kind of showing top-line metrics, the most important things for higher management or for your team to look at. For this particular exercise, we're going to use Google Data Studio, which is a free dashboard tool by Google, and you just go to datastudio.google.com and you can sign up there. First thing we need to do when we create a report or a dashboard is bring in a data source. So we add a data source over here in our data sources area, and then we press the blue button. Then we have all these different ways to import data. We can use Google Ads or Google Analytics. So let's use Google Analytics. And we pick our account. We're going to pick the demo account, merchandise store, and the master view. And then we just have to connect that data. Now we've imported all of these different data sources. So let's just create the report. And we're going to add this data source to our report. So let's create a chart. let's pick a bar chart. And we'll put that there. And it's very straightforward what we've done here. We have pulled in page views as our metric, and our dimension is our organic referral CPC, but there are other dimensions here. We may put, so let's put in device category as our dimension, and this is showing us page views by these different devices. And we might put this up here. And this is important for us because we are going to show a mobile dashboard or something like that. Now let's create another chart. Let's put in a pie chart. And again, it's defaulting to this medium thing. So it defaults to medium, but we're going to just customize it here and change it to device and device category. And we can see the percentage of page views for each. We may not be interested in page views. We may be interested in transactions. So we can just change this to transactions, and we can see that mobile is driving the majority of transactions here. And we're going to change this to transactions. Change this to transactions, and we can see yes, mobile is doing that, but let's just add in a date range to make our dashboard dynamic. So I've added the date range here. And now I might put in the start date as the 1st of January and the end date as the 31st of January. We might want to add some insights. So a really important part of dashboard building is to add your insights, and your insights is you, the analyst, writing what you believe is happening. So we can write something in here. So we've written something in here that relates to that. Now we may want to include another chart. So let's just add in a map maybe. And we can expand this out, put it where we want on our dashboard for our date range, which we may put up here. We can also add things like logos in there, so we can start to see how we can visually build a dashboard for our team. So we can modify different aspects of our dashboard quickly. So let's just add some names to our charts here. Let's call this one something like this. And we can just move stuff around as we like. Okay, so we've made a very basic dashboard here. We've put in our date range, which can be changed. We can change it over here. We can modify our fonts and modify our text inputs. We can change the color of our charts. We can show our axes. We can update different aspects of our charts. And when we're ready, when we're happy that we've laid out our January insights on our dashboard in a very understandable and analyst-driven way where we're writing what we know from the insights. Now, this is a basic example, so there aren't a lot of insights here, but when you're doing your own charts, do write in more words for senior people and fewer words for your analyst team. And when you're ready, you can download it as a PDF. And then when we open our PDF, we can see, first of all, that our grid is gone. We have our date range. We have our title of our chart. We have our title of this chart. And this one already has a title in it on our January highlights. A very basic use of Data Studio. You can connect inputs. I would encourage everyone to play around with this tool. Again, because it's free, you can title it, you can do whatever you want. Because it's free, you are able to really get into your data here and connect different data sources. All kinds of interesting things with filters and visualizations and layouts to just bring the data alive for your team, for your managers, and just show the value of what you're doing in a very visual snapshot way that can be shared and understood by anyone reading it.
Hello, I'm Jessica, a consultant with experience in marketing and an in-depth knowledge of the latest marketing techniques. Strategy is a word that we tend to use casually in our day-to-day business, but it is often misinterpreted. Therefore, it is important that we start off with an accurate understanding of what we mean when we talk about strategy. Digital strategies govern how digital is used to achieve commercial goals. A key foundation of digital strategy, as you will learn, is that it is primarily about understanding your audience, their behaviors, and how you might craft new behavior that involves your brand, product, or services online. Strategy is regularly mistaken for tactics. Short-term, specific goals fit under the tactics moniker. Strategy, on the other hand, relates to your long-term digital objectives and operates across all of the digital channels your customer utilizes. In short, digital strategies operate across all digital channels used by your organization or client. They target audiences with creative formats, working to drive towards a single objective or set of objectives. Digital can be how you are using content on any of your online channels. Digital can also be how you use paid advertising to reach people. Digital can be how your customer connects with your brand, for example, by buying online, clicking like on Facebook, or tweeting about your brand. True digital practitioners utilize all three to get results. A digital strategy involves a mix of setting goals, executing tactics, and attempting to achieve high-level business results. It is also a blueprint for your use of digital. What we have to be aware of from the very start is that you have to be committed to a clear purpose and clearly identified success outcomes. Because if you don't know why you're doing it and what the end goal needs to be, then what are you chasing as a result of using digital? Okay, so before we really dive deeper into strategy, you first need to understand the core elements of digital strategy development, and there's 5 of them. They are objectives, channel strategy, content strategy, media strategy, and tactics. Objectives is about setting the goals and outcomes you are trying to achieve, both with your overall plan and from the individual elements that make up the plan. Objectives usually fall into 3 main categories: awareness, consideration, and conversion and retention. These are the types of behaviors that can be most effectively influenced by digital channels. Firstly, we need to identify the awareness levels of our product or brand. We can do this by using some keyword research, using our brand or product name in tools like Google Keyword Planner or Google Trends. We can also use our own knowledge of the market. If awareness levels are low, we will have to make people aware of the existence and benefits of the product in order to drive sales or conversions. Banners and outbound display and video on websites and social media are good approaches to driving awareness. If there is some awareness of our product, but the market is cluttered, or if our product needs differentiation, we can use reach and frequency of messaging to drive recall of our product's USPs, unique selling propositions, or ESPs, emotional selling propositions. This encourages consideration in the decision-making process of our consumers. Again, outbound display and social, as well as wider organic and paid search, can help drive consideration. Ultimately, we will want to drive sales or conversions for our brand or product. These can be online or offline, and will build on the awareness and consideration-based activities from the previous 2 stages. We can use search channels to drive this type of objective. Finally, for retention, keeping previous customers engaged to encourage brand advocacy or repeat purchases, It is generally accepted that it is easier to drive sales from people who have already bought from you than to attract new customers. The retention objective, therefore, should be considered high value. Many multi-channel digital marketing campaigns will include elements of each objective to help customers along the sales journey. When setting objectives for your digital strategy, it's important to identify the priority of the objectives. This helps to focus your resources, time, and budget on delivering the most important goal for the campaign. The choice and priority of the objectives will influence the channels you choose as part of your channel strategy. So, the channel strategy is understanding how you're going to use all of the different digital platforms that are available to you. It is about understanding what's possible with a channel, what formats you're going to use, and how you're going to use the features of that channel, how it's going to be used most effectively, and how you're going to target the audience engaging with it. Channels are all of the different digital platforms and locations that you might utilize. A channel strategy is an understanding of what is possible with channels, but choosing to utilize either a specific channel or a feature of a channel because you know it is pertinent to your target audience. The content strategy is what you're going to put in those channels. So this strategy is informed by your overarching digital strategy. The content can be what you put on your site, what you put on your social media, how you tweet. That is all content, and it's important to recognize that content doesn't just mean it's a video or an image. Content can be a top 5 things that you should do on an article on your site, or the content can also be the image on the header of your site. So it's just important to recognize that content encapsulates everything that's there, not just the things that you make. The media strategy is often overlooked by smaller brands because it's a complex area to understand, but also with bigger brands, they often overlook the investment required within digital to actually be successful. So the media strategy is how you're utilizing your paid activity. How are you reaching people with ads? How are you making sure that you're reaching the right people using the targeting that's available to you and the formats that are available? And finally, we have tactics. Tactics are the individual executions that are a part of making up your strategy. It's important to recognize that quite often when somebody says, our strategy is to do this, they could be, in fact, talking about tactics. So if I said to you that our strategy is to increase our brand awareness via Twitter, the tactic here is to tweet, whereas the strategy is to use Twitter to communicate more positively with your customers. That is an example of a clear strategy. There's a clear purpose, there's a long-term goal, and that is how a digital strategy becomes more effective. In summary, the purpose of your digital marketing strategy is to use your available resources, channels, tools, and people to deliver on an agreed objective while meeting expectations. Creating a strategy to deliver on your objective can be achieved by understanding available resources, setting timelines and budgets, looking at current and past activity, and assigning ownership of activities and KPIs to team members or stakeholders. There is a 3-pronged approach to understanding the outputs of a digital marketing strategy. First, and as we have already discussed, you must establish the foundations of your strategy. What are you trying to achieve, and how do you intend to achieve it? Second, you must have a strong familiarity with your current digital strategy, expectations, and the resources available to you. What is working and what isn't? Examine what is at your disposal and plan to adjust accordingly. Third, you need to confirm the crucial requirements in running your strategy, the budget you have access to, and who exactly is in charge of the key decisions. Ownership among team members must be established. All advertising can be digital, but not all digital can be advertising. Digital represents the medium through which you are communicating, or the channels your audience are consuming information through. How this can be achieved is by understanding that there are a number of philosophies of digital strategy. 1. digital as concept. 2, digital as advertising. 3, digital as participation. 4, digital as a balance of all three. In this regard, simply engaging with your customer on social channels for customer service or emailing useful blog content to your customer with the sole purpose of driving goodwill and awareness falls outside the realm of advertising, as you are not necessarily delivering a message about a brand or product to encourage them to take action. Instead, you are adding value to their lives by helping them out. As a result of good engagement, your brand equity and value will increase in the eyes of the audience, which is of significant value to the brand and was part achieved through non-advertising methods using digital engagement. Let's begin with a very high-level look at your strategy. This is your overarching strategy, the highest guide to your activity. It is your strategy in one sentence, or a number of key phrases that quickly summarize your digital strategy. It involves a simple statement of what you will do and what your objectives are. The overarching strategy should be a simple and clear sentence that anyone could understand, even if they are unaware of the full plan. Your overarching strategy should be based on a core insight. You need to gather as much information on your audience, channels, and products, for example. Basically everything that has been worked on to date. This will become the basis of your insight. When doing your research, consider questions like, what are the interesting learnings that you can use to develop your core insight? What content is your audience consuming? What format do they prefer? What are their interests? Can you identify a gap or a weakness for your brand based on what you're seeing and reading in your research? When you have identified your core insight, you can begin to develop the overarching strategy for your digital campaign. We are going to make an important distinction now regarding the difference between digital marketing and digital media. The difference between the two is actually pretty clear. Digital marketing is the practice of utilizing digital tools for the purposes of marketing. Digital media is part of digital marketing. More specifically, it is the medium through which the marketing activity is delivered. For example, Google, Facebook, email, and display. Digital marketing consists of all online activities, creative formats, and messaging that aims to engage with consumers online, using both free and paid channels for the purpose of delivering or part delivering on a company's commercial objectives. Digital media refers to the channels used to distribute the messaging to the audience. For example, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and email. Marketers use media plans to manage these different activities, which include a detailed guide to the formats, timings, and spends for a campaign. Depending on the size of your organization and the budget available, the marketing team can be large or small. In smaller campaigns, digital marketers may be required to double job and work across a number of channels. It is important to identify what resources are required early on. You can then plan how much is required, and more importantly, plan how to avoid overinvesting. Digital is an exciting space, so it's easy for team members to get a little bit lost in it and dedicate too much time to something that is more fun to work with. Time. Digital can be time-consuming and labor-intensive if not planned correctly, and as a result, you might run the risk of underestimating how much time it's going to take and how many people you will need to complete the task. In some cases, you may need to upskill existing members of staff or bring in someone who has a higher skill level to begin to manage your team and the project. Money. Money affects a number of different areas. It can be a cause of frustration for marketers because, historically, their perception was that digital was relatively free, it was relatively cost-effective, and that it was an efficient use of budget. In reality, as digital has become more advanced, some of the practices that are carried out in digital are a lot more complex. Digital therefore requires more time, more investment, and more tools to measure it effectively. Therefore, it is crucial to understand everything that you have available to you. People. People are the most underestimated resource. It is important to familiarize yourself with knowing when to bring in the right people so that they're spending time efficiently towards the development of the project more efficiently. Businesses often see early successes in digital and don't address the increased requirement for people or don't address the need quickly enough, which can rapidly turn success into failure. When putting your digital plan together, assess your project requirements and match them to the skill set of your team. Or if you need outside help, consider an agency or freelancers to bridge the skills gap. That way you'll have the right people in place to deliver on your plan and objectives. A resource map providing a clear layout of all the resources you will require and identifying gaps in your current resources should be used to help plan your project. Resource maps don't need to be 100% accurate, but they are the first step in outlining what resources you'll require. A resource map allows you to illustrate project requirements against current availability. Invariably, digital suffers from underinvestment, and a resource map can be a good way to build the case for securing more resources. In short, a resource map is a comparison between what you estimate you will need and what resources are actually available. Using this comparison, you can see where you may have gaps and decide whether they can be filled by more people, money, or time. Taking the time to map out the resources required can help you secure buy-in from managers and budget holders, and it will allow you to project manage the plan more effectively.
So, the next thing we're going to talk about, and it's the point of frustration for a lot of digital marketers, is the budget. Now, the problem with budgets is that you need to plan for how much money you're willing to invest over a given time. Therefore, you have to create a budget plan. You need to come up with a plan of how you're going to implement the budget and how much each function is going to require. Because if you have a meticulously planned budget, providing all the necessary detail, it's very difficult to say no. Essentially, budgets comprise media costs, creative production, agency fees, and digital tools and technology for the purpose of delivering on a campaign or strategy. Additionally, staff costs, training, and processes can be included as part of the overall budget, though this isn't always the case. Media costs. This will usually be the largest budget consideration of any digital marketing plan. In order to budget and forecast, you can use historical performance or estimates from the channels or media platform. You should look at the overall goal of your strategy and prioritize the budgets towards the channels that deliver on your goals. If your goal is sales, you will put more budget into PPC than the other channels in your plan, as PPC is a conversion-driving channel. On the other hand, if your goal is interest or consideration, you will put more budget into display or social media. As every digital marketing strategy will be different, there is no one-size-fits-all rule for budget allocation. You should try to balance channel and conversion costs from historical data against your overall goal to distribute the budget across your different channels. It's possible to move media budget from one channel to another if you are seeing good performance when the campaign is live. Creative production. Production costs will be the second largest expense after media when budgeting for a digital marketing campaign. Depending on the type of media chosen, you will need to produce specific creative assets. These include videos, social media images, advertising banners, website image assets, email formats, and other creative outputs to use on your media and website. These fees are for designer, account manager, and video production time. So it's important to remember that certain media choices require creative formats to run, or you can't use them to their full potential. As a result, it is essential to leave enough budget available after media costs to produce the creative assets to run on your media choices. Agency fees. If you are using a third party to run and manage your campaign, including booking and buying media, managing creative assets, reporting and optimization, you will need to pay for their time.
This is usually costed on an hourly fee, and it tends to be lower than media and production costs. While some agencies will charge their fee as a percentage of media spend, this method rewards spend, not performance. The agency gets paid simply for spending the media budget, and there is also little insight into how many hours are invested in the campaign. As a result, it can be difficult to drive performance when agency fees are calculated as a percentage of media spend. An hourly fee is therefore a better model for driving performance. Digital tools. Sometimes there are digital tools required for the campaign. For example, ad serving tools, which are used to upload, manage, and serve your image creative assets to your audience. These tools and additional analytics tools will have associated fees. If there are additional tools that are required for the campaign, it's important to understand the value and purpose of the tools before committing to a budget to pay for them. Therefore, it's essential to understand if they are a crucial part of the success of the campaign, or a nice-to-have additional piece to enhance understanding. So, your budget is directly dependent on what factors are influencing these areas. Questions which can arise include, do you need a larger team? Do you need specific skill sets within your team to achieve your objectives? Do you need to adopt a new process or piece of technology to improve your results? Technology, particularly in larger teams, really helps to improve efficiency. How you achieve efficiency is by examining existing and new tools to make sure that the teams are linking in with each other correctly, that they're sharing data and insight correctly and accurately. So it's important to recognize at what point you need to invest in these, should you find reasons to address possible inefficiencies. Training, as we've already mentioned, must not be overlooked. You should be asking, how much training does your team require? How much do you need to upscale your team? It's important to recognize this early because it's often something that falls by the wayside. If you find inadequacies, then you should try to remedy this as soon as possible. So, what volume and detail is required in your ad buying strategy? If you have a high investment in media, in advertising, in paid ads, what you're going to find is that it's going to require more tools and more people to actually manage that advertising. As you start to increase your efforts into your media buying, content partners, or network partners, or working with other sites that use display advertising, what you're going to find is that you're going to need more resources to actually manage this. Moreover, you will discover not just the level of manpower and amount of resources required, but also how much time it will take to monitor and control your digital strategy. When you're planning your budget, the following considerations are key areas for you to evaluate. How many people are in your target audience? What are your objectives? How many people could you realistically make customers? How much money are you willing to invest in digital? Are you allocating enough ad spend? Are you under-investing and limiting your impact? Have you allocated budget to cover busy months or campaigns? Let's start with the target audience. So, how many people, realistically, are within the target audience that you feel you can reach? We all want to be highly successful and make millions of dollars for the organizations that we work for, but realistically, how do we ascertain a successful measure of new customers? How many customers do you need to make in order to keep the lights on? How many customers do you need to make in order to be really successful? What follows next is the important question of how big is your budget? If you think you will be given a small budget, I would suggest focusing on your target audience through a specific lens. For example, if you told me that your target audience was 25 to 35-year-olds, and then you told me that you had a small budget, the first question I would ask you is, do you think you will be more successful with a male or female audience? For multi-market, it's equivalent to saying, if you think that you're going to be the most effective with city dwellers, then only target the capital cities of specific markets to make sure that you're effective. Secondly, You need to understand that budget setting for channels and formats is linked to your objectives. You should allocate more budget to those channels that will efficiently and effectively deliver on your digital marketing objectives. It's possible to forecast channel performance by using historical performance as a benchmark for future campaigns. Using historical conversion rates, you can estimate how much traffic you need at that conversion rate to deliver a certain number of sales or leads. With paid media, you can estimate the cost of that traffic by using historical CPCs or CPMs to estimate costs. The third consideration is money. So, how much money do you realistically feel you can invest in digital? It is often the case that when you go through this process, you will realize that you don't have enough money to invest in digital to do absolutely everything you want to do. That's okay. Nobody ever has enough money to put in digital. I regularly have to bow to give money to other channels or other media because strategically, it's the right thing to do. The next consideration is, are you under-investing in digital? And is there a gap that you need to now make up? This is a commonly occurring challenge for a lot of businesses who might be late to the game. Generally, they find that they haven't invested in digital, and all of a sudden, they need a new website. They need social channels. They need to create content. All of that can be quite daunting, so you need to find a way to make sure that you understand how you might be able to spread those costs out. Next is your ad spend allocation. This is important because a lot of brands early on don't invest in media, and similar to the under-investing example, it can become quite a shock when you realize that you actually have to pay to play for a lot of the media channels that you should be using. Some brands start out with social, and then ignore search or ignore display for a long time, and then they realize they're missing those elements in their media mix. So it's important to anticipate ad spend allocation and if it will be enough. And the final point is the budget allocation and prioritization. When you get to the end of this, if you feel you're underinvesting, then you need to make a case for either more investment or you need to make a case for a better use of your resources. The problem with underinvesting is that you can find that you're not going to do enough to even try to make digital work. It will not be a success, and you will find yourself facing challenges around it not working. The reality, however, was that the business didn't invest correctly in the first place, thereby obfuscating the efficacy of your digital strategy campaign. Next, we're going to talk about developing a budgeting plan. Budgeting plans allow you to plan out all investment month by month over a specific period of time. Planning long-term will secure investment. Without a plan, money will be moved around, resulting in digital being underinvested in, underperforming, and ultimately being questioned. Without a plan, what will happen is that money you had will all of a sudden get moved to another department or another requirement because there was no plan for it. So, just ensure that when you're planning over a number of months, that you address moments when you think that the investment will need to fluctuate. For example, in campaigns during seasonal periods, try to anticipate how your budget might need to increase or decrease. The importance of Christmas for retailers is a prime example of this. Retailers tend to underestimate how much budget is going to be required during the Christmas period. So, if you've spent time addressing your budget, you can ensure that the teams are also sticking to the plan. Everybody's following the numbers that are on the sheet. Then begins the reflection stage, when you should try to discern if you underspent or overspent in certain areas with a view to making adjustments in the following period. Overinvestment frequently occurs in the early periods, And then by the time you get to the end of the campaign, you realize that you actually don't have the money to achieve something that you wanted to do. Building a plan that tries to anticipate these possible fluctuations to give you the room to maneuver can make all the difference to seeing good results from your digital strategy campaign. So, if you know what your budget is for a year, you should plan for a year. If you know what your budget is for half year, you should plan for a half year, and so on. Never plan beyond where the budget is fully allocated, because all you're doing then is guesswork. Understand that ROI is the cost of your digital activities versus the return they generate in terms of monetary investment. This is usually reported as a percentage and can be measured by this formula. ROI equals revenue minus marketing spend times 100 divided by marketing spend. ROI can be understood as the return on marketing investment. Success within your digital activities can, generally, be boiled down to two key outcomes: sales and leads. Sales. Someone buying a product through a digital channel or as a result of digital activity is an effective measure of how much sales are being generated versus how much it costs to actually deliver. In short, sales will have an explicit revenue value. Leads. Leads, in this context, can be defined as capturing valuable data from customers who express an interest in your product or service. This data is best captured through lead forms on landing pages on your site. The value of a lead can be understood by its conversion rate and average sale cost. If we divide the sale value by the number of leads needed to generate a sale, we get revenue per lead. In order to determine the value of a lead for the purpose of ROI, we need to calculate what the revenue is per lead. If we divide the sale value by the number of leads needed to generate a sale, we get revenue per lead. Once we know the revenue per lead and the cost per lead, we can determine ROI. For example, if leads have 10% sale conversion rate by sales representatives, then that means it takes 10 leads to drive one sale. If a sale is worth $100 and it takes 10 leads to generate one sale, then we can say on average, one lead is worth $10. In other words, a $100 sale value divided by 10 leads required to generate a sale suggests a return of $10 revenue per lead. ROI is one way of measuring the success of a campaign or strategy. Another approach is to look at other valuable actions, such as micro-conversions. Micro-conversions are the actions that a user takes that contribute to the purchase decision-making process. ROI can be a monetary value, but might also apply a value to a specific action. For instance, site visits, inquiries, and video views. To measure the value to non-conversion activity like social media or display, you can look at how much engagement is required to deliver a sale or lead. Social and display have an indirect effect on leads and sales. Therefore, we can look to see if our activity had impact on conversion rates for the conversion channels by seeing what conversion rates and volumes were like for conversion channels before the campaign, during the campaign, and after the campaign. By recording any changes in conversion rates from the normal level, we can start to see the value of our assisting channels. This way, we can attribute any uplifts from the norm to our campaign. When we're talking about top-of-funnel or non-conversion channels, we need to measure their impact in a different way than direct sales or leads. For example, video views can deliver higher awareness, positive conversations about your brand, and higher brand search volumes, all of which are valuable outcomes. Customer awareness of your brand can rise during or following a social media campaign, which could lead to an increase in brand PPC searches or sales. To see if awareness or non-conversion channels impact your sales, look for a change in brand PPC searches or PPC or SEO conversion rates in Google Analytics. The creative strategy is one of the most important elements because it is the most visual element that will dictate the overall look and feel of your brand. This is the documentation and understanding of your objective in relation to your audience and brand. Ideally, you are trying to develop a strategy that engages with your audience in such a way to deliver on your business objectives in the context of your brand values. Now it's time to take your strategy and build creative messages and ideas that you will communicate through digital. A creative strategy is the long-term approach of how you develop visual stimuli for your brand, product, or service. It dictates the theme, look, and feel of all your assets. The creative strategy should again adhere to your overarching strategy. Doing this ensures that all work is following a specific guide, targeting a specific response, and cultivating repeat and specific behavior. As previously highlighted, you must consider the budget when developing a creative strategy. It is important not to limit your initial thinking, but at some stage you need to draw the line and be realistic about your possibilities. The key areas to identify in creative strategy are ideas. What content will you create? What will it say? How are you different? Activations. What will you do that will encourage the consumer to respond, engage, and converse? Visual. What will everything look like? Is there a visual theme or guideline? Narrative. Refer back to the content strategy. What is the story we are trying to tell? Managing expectations, unfortunately, is part of the job for any digital marketing manager. There is a myth out there that it is free. Highly creative, highly technical executions require investment. It is important that you temper your team's ambitions slightly. The next step for your team is to compile a full format list for your content plan. This should be added to your content plan and include not only the creative requirement of each format, but the dimensions and specifications as well. If digital is quite new to you, then it's recommended you keep things simple at first, with a view to building up to more technical pieces. Creative strategies can become quite complex, and with more technicality comes greater demands on your time and resources. You should try to keep in mind demands on your resources and identify those formats that may not be worth the effort. Don't forget, if you're investing in a big piece of work, you should be matching that in paid media to deliver it through paid channels. Things do not go viral on their own. Rich media display is costly to make, but equally expensive to deliver. Furthermore, different digital formats require and will be delivered in different dimensions. Becoming familiar with the formats can be a challenge. The best thing to do is to become familiar with each platform and its respective format as you require them. In display, they are delivered in the sizes of pixels. For example, MPU 300 by 250 pixels. Finally, when assessing your creative, you should consider if it fits your brand values, uses the language of your audience so it can be understood, and aims to deliver on your overall objectives. The biggest challenge in the asset development stage is maximizing the efficiency and effectiveness of your assets. Essentially, how you can sweat your assets. You can begin by creating assets that can easily be converted to suit other social platforms. Try to develop creative that is platform agnostic and then tailor it to specific platforms. For example, shoot video at the highest quality setting and consider how the video can be effective as a vertical or horizontal video. During production, you should consider readability and video resolution across devices to ensure you can engage your audience on a mobile or desktop. GIFs can be captured out of video creative to be used in other campaigns or to complement existing ones. Convert existing creative assets into dynamic assets if appropriate. Examples of this would be on Facebook Canvas, where advertisers can create a rich mobile experience to target their audience on Facebook and Instagram mobile apps. Take existing visual assets, like TV ads, and edit them to suit digital formats and channels. Identify and utilize anything that you built as representing more content for your site to aid SEO. These assets include things like infographics, which can be distributed via social or email, which in turn drives links for SEO off-site link building. A content strategy is a guide to how you create content, what content is written, and what formats are selected that drive toward your success outcomes. The content strategy should be based on the overarching strategy. The number one priority for your content strategy is to produce content that is consistently effective and builds the same behaviors with consistent audiences. From your overarching strategy, you can define how it will guide your content strategy. Where necessary, rewrite your content strategy to work toward the same goals outlined by your overarching strategy. Essentially, a content strategy is based on your overarching strategy, explains your brand or campaign story in narrative, states the main purpose of content in relation to delivering on your objectives, details key content elements such as format, tone, and messaging, ensures content is developed for purpose and effect. An example of this would be, a part of your strategy involves communicating with customers in unique and different ways that change perceptions of the brand. Your content strategy, therefore, would comprise delivering exciting content to your social audience in ways never seen before. Planning is a key activity for all elements of strategy. This is no different with content. Content planning involves addressing all details of your content strategy that will help plan content from targets to implementation. What platforms will you operate on? How often will you post, tweet, snap? What is your tone and personality? What is your core narrative, and what stories are you telling? From this, you create a platform-specific plan that details actual posts. The key attribute of a content strategy is designing effective content, and consistency is crucial for content. Brands often bounce from one story or narrative to another, which reduces engagement and recall. The audience simply finds it difficult to piece together all the inconsistent content they are exposed to. Remember, a consistent story creates a consistent audience response, and a consistent response builds behavior and positive perception of your brand with your audience. A narrative or story is the cornerstone of your strategy. It is what you use to build engagement and affinity with your audience. Regardless of your overall objective, your content strategy should have a narrative that tells a story, and that story must work to help you achieve your overall objective. A format plan is a list of all the formats that you will be implementing. It is necessary to ensure your creative formats are being developed to the required specifications. Developing a format plan allows you to completely understand the number of varying formats you will require. This is important as you move into the creative development phase. Creating a format plan involves listing out all of the various formats you will aim to use and the various specifications that are required. For example, video, canvas, link, and embed ads. Content on your site should utilize dynamic content and text that is relevant to your brand. This will help build your SEO approach. You can start by laying out all content in a given time period, listing all relevant channels, detailing all copy, listing format details, understanding dimensions and requirements. Listing out all your channels, formats, and dimensions is a task that will reveal where you can be more efficient. It acts as a quick reference guide and checklist for your designers or content creators to ensure all content pieces are being delivered. It also allows you to quickly sense-check formats against KPIs. For example, If clicks to site is your objective, formats like photo image will draw wasted clicks opening the image instead of clicking to the site. Link embed would be much more effective. If hashtag usage is a goal for your campaign, consider using conversational ads and using one hashtag in the copy. At a later stage, you will need to determine how many channels you wish to support. Each channel will require very specific format requirements. There are lead formats, which are the most commonly used formats and are very effective. You should understand what formats you will implement as a part of your activity. Video, VOD, social, pre-roll. Display, image, copy, and dynamic. PPC, text ads, site links, phone, and other ad extensions. Facebook, video, canvas. LinkedIn, display formats, posts, InMail. Twitter, video, cards, lead generation. Instagram, carousel, video. Snapchat, real-time asset creation. Now it's time to begin looking at the different channels available for your campaign. Each channel has its own strengths and weaknesses, benefits and costs, and freedoms and limits. Each should be scrutinized carefully to understand how it will or won't improve your campaign strategy. When you begin with your objectives and choose the optimal channel mix, you should identify the creative formats required and make sense of the value of production for these assets in relation to media costs. This is a good way to understand what media choices you need to produce for the best outcome. Choose social channels that are used by your customers and use paid social to drive reach and frequency of your ads and content to raise awareness and drive customer engagement and retention. Social can drive some direct conversions, but it tends to have more of an assisting role in driving sales. Direct sales from social, rather, tend to occur with low-cost products. In most cases, awareness and engagement metrics are best suited to measuring the success of paid social, with assisted conversions showing how it impacts on conversions and sales. Display placements on websites that are used by your target audience or retarget specific audience groups on multiple websites to drive awareness of your product or service. The success of display is best understood in terms of how effectively you can reach your target audience and serve your ads enough times that audience recall of your offering increases. Reach and frequency metrics are best suited to measuring the success of display campaigns, while assisted post-click or post-impression conversions can illustrate display's impact on sales. When we consider paid search or PPC, keywords we much organize your keywords into ad groups and campaigns with compelling copy and ad extensions to encourage clicks from searchers who are actively interested in your product or brand. Google is the most widely used search engine, but adding Bing, Yahoo, and other search engines to your plan can open up your search activity to different types of searchers and drive incremental opportunities. Total sales, leads, cost per sale, conversion rate, and other conversion metrics are best suited to measure success for PPC. Choose to optimize the non-paid aspect of your search activity by ensuring the technical features of your website are working efficiently, particularly in terms of load speed, mobile friendliness, and limited or no broken links. Ensure the content you create contains frequent but natural use of search terms and phrases that your target searcher might use. quality and well-distributed content will accrue links from websites. Link building from quality websites will increase the visibility and rank for your website over time. Organic search drives the majority of clicks on desktop devices and is considered more trustworthy than paid search by many searchers. PPC will drive more clicks on a mobile device, as it takes a few scrolls to get past the PPC results to get the organic results below them. PPC and SEO, ideally, work together to try to capture as many searches as possible. Metrics used to measure the success of your SEO activities include conversion metrics, total sales, leads, and conversion rate. When assessing blog engagement, use metrics like repeat visits, average time on site, and traffic levels to understand the value of SEO. Choose the email channel to drive retention of customers by engaging your mailing list. Those on your mailing list are ideally engaged with your brand. That's why they signed up. Distribute content like special offers to engage, entice, and build customer loyalty over time. Use marketing automation to automatically email content to different persona types which you have defined at key times. They will be best received and consumed by the audience. Be mindful of GDPR compliance when undertaking an email campaign. It is important to realize your retention objectives with email. Measure success by looking at open rates, email click rates, mailing list growth, repeat visits, and higher lifetime customer value of mailing list subscribers versus site average. Email can directly drive conversions and, depending on the type of email program, this metric can be used to measure success. But for the most part, email drives retention. Finally, content marketing will feature in all aspects of digital marketing, from video and blogs to copy and white papers. Repeat engagement of content will have a positive effect on customer engagement and retention. It can drive awareness and assist in conversion activity. Content can be measured in terms of how it impacts the channel on which it is distributed. For example, engagement rates on social media, conversion rates via SEO, and so on. Choose a selection of channels based on how they can deliver on your objectives. Each channel will have a core function that can be related to delivering your objective. You can upweight or downweigh the budget and resource investment for every channel to prioritize high-impact channels related to your KPI. When you're looking at your overall KPIs, you should allocate more resources to those channels that will directly deliver on your KPIs. For example, if you want to raise awareness of a new product, you will invest mostly in display and social, as these are top-of-funnel channels that will directly impact awareness. Alongside developing content to drive informational searches for discovery from SEO, you can include emailing existing customers in your plan. With most of the budget and resources in these high-impact awareness channels, you might only have a small portion left for channels like PPC, which is a predominantly conversion-based channel and less suited for awareness activity. Likewise, a conversion KPI campaign will have a PPC and remarketing focus with lower investment in display and social. When you begin choosing your channels with your objective in mind, you will be able to see what the optimal channel mix might be for your campaign objectives.
A media plan serves as a guide to how you will spend your ad budget, but it also serves as a way to track spends. At the end of each month, you should be reconciling your plan, which involves putting actual spends in the columns, moving budget either forward or, if you overspent, moving it back. Media plans are usually tables in Excel, with each channel written on its own row as a line item. The channel name, for example, Facebook, is written on the left, and the audience targeting, objective, ad delivery, cost, and run dates are written on the right of the table.
The benefit of detailing each platform line by line is that now you can determine how much content you have against how much support they will each receive. This is important, especially during campaign setup, because you'll know exactly what you're going to be doing throughout the whole campaign. And if you have an idea for a piece of content that's adding to this, then you'll need to actually find the budget first. The plan will also contain estimates of impressions and clicks that should be delivered for the budget. Digital marketers can work out ad delivery, impressions, and clicks by agreeing a CPM in advance for premium display. By dividing the budget by historical CPMs for GDN and social channels and historical CPCs for paid search, digital marketers can estimate what the budget could deliver in terms of click traffic and impressions. Sometimes including the historical conversion rate for the channels could help forecast conversions from the campaign. Simply multiply the forecasted clicks for that channel by the conversion rate for the channel to broadly estimate conversions for your activity. Once executed by the different in-house or agency stakeholders, PPC specialists, social media specialists, or display and video specialists, checking in daily becomes part of the routine to see if the plan is working or if changes are required to rectify errors or capitalize on opportunities.
Campaign action plans are similar to media plans, but they cover all aspects of the campaign. They are the project plan for all the moving parts in a digital strategy, and will detail paid media channels. They tend not to include ad delivery or finer details of the paid media piece, though. Non-paid channels. Briefing deadlines for creative. Run dates for channels and timings for production. Budgets per line item. Ultimately, they are a project management document to outline the budgets, channels, production, and timings of all elements in the campaign execution. Like a media plan, they are formatted visually, like a calendar or Gantt chart, to make them easier to understand. For larger campaigns with an offline element, we can look to integrate digital media to amplify and enhance performance across other channels, for example, TV. TV is definitely one of the strongest mediums which digital can support. Many viewers sit down in front of the TV while using social sites on their mobile device. This dual screening presents an opportunity to enhance performance. In this instance, there are two key tactics that can be implemented. Trans time mapping. When you buy a TV commercial, you are given very specific times and channels for when it will be shown. These are called trans times. If you ensure TV audiences are targeted with both your creative and search activity to support the TV commercial during those times, two things can occur. Users are more likely to click on social content or search for your product, and there is higher recall of your TV creative. When you map your TV trans times to website traffic changes or social engagement, we can see the impact of the TV commercial on changing online behavior in your audience. Tracking the difference between normal levels and the traffic spike after a TV commercial airs helps measure the impact of your TV slot. Hashtag integration. If your TV commercial has social planned at the center of it, in the sense that you hope to create some conversation about it, then a hashtag would be highly effective. If your hashtag is clearly listed at the end of the TV commercial, it will give audiences the correct hashtag to participate in your conversation. This also applies to radio, print, and outdoor advertising.